Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel's Mutant Necromancer. Chapter 41. Reality is harsher than jokes, as the two ninja bosses pull off their acrobatics and meet Kane and Matt, who are utterly ignorant of the smoke bombs, and neither of them will show mercy. Matt waved his guide stick to meet the ninja leader wearing steel claws, and the remaining scythe ninja Kane naturally took over. With the cover of smoke, he was finally able to show his true strength up. When a short-handled bone scythe blocked the ninja leader's scythe, and before he could figure out how Kane could see, another bone scythe whizzed at his neck. The leader of the ninja broke out in a cold sweat, and barely avoided the knife with the iron chain in his hand, but the tip of the sickle still opened a big hole in his chest. Bah-gah! The leader cursed in a low voice, but his chest did not seep out of blood, but instead emitted a trace of black ash. Although he didn't know why, the white-haired young man in front of him didn't seem to be affected by the smoke, and he was quite strong, and the two scythes he took out from nowhere in his hand were also extremely sharp, so he decided to use a long-range attack to consume Kane. Poor guy, he must not have looked at the imperial calendar when he went out tonight. Of course, whether the Japanese have an imperial calendar is also worth scrutinizing. From the beginning of the attack to the present, he has successfully chosen every wrong decision. As an assassin and a mage competing with long-range attacks, it's a good thing he can figure it out. However, Kane, who knocked the dart with the bone armor, was not in a hurry to take the opponent's life. He was a little concerned about the abnormalities of these hand ninjas. He needed to do some small tests on this guy. Aging. This curse, which is harmful to all creatures, was fleeting on the ninja leader, and it had no effect at all. It seemed that these guys were not living people, but more like undead creatures he summoned. Bone prison. Kane needed to confirm again. A bone prison trapped the guy who was throwing darts vigorously, and then stepped forward to observe carefully. The trapped ninja boss yelled without fear, but it didn't affect Kane. He didn't understand Japanese anyway, and the guy quickly realized this, and cursed in broken English, "You die. It's set, the hand's pursuit is endless, and no one will survive." Kane was not interested in hearing such unnutritious words from him, so he turned a bone spear and stuffed it into his mouth, and then continued to study his soul. It was only when I got close to Kane that I could see clearly that the red blood on the ninja leader's head was very red, and if I looked carefully, the closer to the black spot, the more red the blood was. This state is not so much red blood. There are black spots on the blood. It might be better to say that the black spots gave birth to the blood. Life siphon. In order to verify the properties of these two substances, Kane activated the life siphon, but the strange thing is that only the red blood was attracted by the spell, while the black spots did not move at all, and even started to flow. The red chi and blood were pulled in the opposite direction, causing the life siphon to return in vain. Interesting, this is the first time Kane has encountered this situation. He also noticed that when the magic spell and the black spot pulled each other's blood, the ninja leader had an extremely painful expression on his face. He remembered the ninja's endurance. They are all extremely strong, and they can make them who are not afraid of death show such expressions, which fully shows that those blood and black spots are their source of life, and may even be their souls. Kane raised his head and looked around. Matt was fighting with ease, and the leader of Steel Claw didn't pose much threat to him. As long as other ninjas dared to show their heads, they would be named by Morena, who listened to the debate with bone arrows. Through the eyes of the spirit, it can be seen that the moment those ninjas turned into ashes, all the red blood in their bodies was absorbed into the black spots, and they fled to the distance at an extremely fast speed. No matter how this thing looks like a parasite, Kane can't help but frown. The hand has existed in New York City for a long time. Has no one ever suspected that there is something wrong with their death? It is necessary to figure out what this thing is, otherwise it would be troublesome for this inhuman thing to stare at it. Kane immediately pulled out the bone dagger and stabbed it in the heart of the ninja leader. He needed asthma bone dagger for final verification. Ah, the stuffed ninja leader can only utter such a wail, but his eyeballs almost protruding from the eye sockets and the blood vessels bursting on his face already show how painful his injuries are. Kane didn't care to look at the abnormality on his face, because the changes in his body were even more astonishing. The bone dagger was deeply pierced into his heart, and the blood in his body was also rapidly shrinking towards the black spot like everyone else. However, unlike the others, the black spot that had absorbed all the energy and blood could not escape, but was completely absorbed by the bone dagger. A pure energy entered Kane's body from the handle of the bone dagger, and his eyes lit up, which was almost the same as when he absorbed the drop of demon blood that night. Could this black spot have something to do with the demon? At the same time, in a street full of Japanese-style buildings near Times Square, there was a scream from a shrine-like building, and several big men in kimonos rushed to the door of the innermost house, anxiously shouted, "My lord, what happened, are you all right?" Crash, the door of the room was opened, and a 7 or 8-year-old boy came out clutching his chest. His clothes were wet with sweat. Looking carefully, the black pupils in his eyes almost covered the entire eyeball. Appearing to be different, he looked at the big men at the door, and asked in a hoarse voice that did not match his age, "Who is on a mission tonight?" The big men looked at each other, and one of them lowered his head and replied, "It's the wild wolf and the poisonous scorpion. They are leading their respective teams on a mission." "Who is the target of the mission?" the little boy continued to ask. "The target of the wild wolf is Erica, and the target of the poisonous scorpion is the death whisperer." A red light flashed in the little boy's dark eyeballs. After thinking for a while, he ordered, "Cancel these 2 missions, but send 4 teams to find out where they went and what happened there." Quote, "What do you mean? Their 2 teams were just smashed, and I want to know who did it." "Yes, my lord." "Then what should I do with the deposit for killing the death whisperer, and return it to the boss?" The little boy glared at the big man who was speaking with vicious eyes, and said viciously, "Is it the first day for you to do business? When did we refund the money in hand? If you want money, let him ask me for it. You tell him that because his information did not match, we lost 2 teams, and that amount of money is considered a pension, idiot, and I need to teach you this." The big man at the door quickly knelt down. Not daring to say a word, the little boy snorted coldly, turned and returned to the house. When the big man outside the house left, he grabbed his clothes by his chest and collapsed to the ground, mouth panting heavily. "Who is it? How could someone in this world hurt my soul seed? Don't let me know who you are." As the bone dagger absorbed the black spots, the ninja leader in front of Kane also turned into a cloud of fly ash. Unlike the previous ninjas, nothing flew away this time. Kane felt that it would be difficult for this guy to have chance of resurrection. Seeing that Matt's side hadn't settled the battle, Kane rushed over immediately. Now these hand ninjas are like a tonic to him, and he won't let go of such a delicacy. The ninja leader, who had no advantage against Matt, was attacked by Kane again, and within 2 moves, he became ashes under the bone dagger. Like the boss just now, a large amount of pure spirit was absorbed into Kane's body again, in vivo. Once the 2 most powerful bosses die, the other ninjas will be completely defeated. However, it seems that the Hand Association's reward and punishment system is very strict. Even if they fight to the last one, none of them will escape. When the last ninja turned into ashes, the effect of the smoke bomb gradually dissipated. Looking at the empty bar, Harry and the others couldn't help complaining about the bad things about these ninjas, which prevented them from enjoying more exciting fighting scenes. "Who are these masked killers, and why did they come to attack us?" Mary Jane couldn't help wondering. After all, ordinary people like them don't have access to these killers from the dark world, but they are quite nervous. Well, how could ordinary people still stay in the bar to watch the show when they encountered this situation? Of course, this may also have something to do with Kane and the others fighting back easily. "Sorry, these killers from the Hand may have come for me and caused trouble for everyone." Erica put away her 10 hands and expressed her apology to everyone. She didn't know that Kane was also the target of the Hand, so she thought both teams came to look for her. These people are so lawless. They dare to commit crimes in public. They simply don't pay attention to the police and the law. As the daughter of the police chief, what Gwen said fits her identity. Fortunately, here the 3 ordinary people are not timid and fearful. Instead, they turned their heads to comfort Erica and denounce the Hand. "By the way, why did those ninjas from the Hand turn into ashes?" Gwen asked curiously. "It's probably Japanese ninjutsu. I heard that they can do some very strange spells, such as being cut down and turning into trees." Mary Jane interjected, and Kane curled his lips secretly to express, "Are you afraid? I watched too many cartoons." In comparison, Harry knew a little more. After all, the asking price of the Hand was not low, and only the truly rich could afford them, so Harry had heard of their names in the social circle. "Did you offend someone? Do you need my help?" Harry asked kindly. Although it was only the first time we met, he could tell that Matt and Erica were not bad people. Willing to help. No, thank you. This is not the first time we have met these guys. We have a solution. Matt politely rejected Harry's offer. Erica's matter is different from the bounty on Kane's head. It wasn't that easy to let her go, and Matt was extremely displeased with their behavior, and he didn't intend to let these lunatics go lightly. Harry drove the two ladies home, and Kane asked Peter to go with him, firstly to let Peter protect them just in case, and secondly, he didn't want Peter to hear some of the words behind him. Hey, Phil, it's me, Kane. Standing in a messy bar, Kane called Phil Coulson. Ah, what's the matter? If Phil, who is always gentle, has the voice he least wants to hear, then Kane's voice must be ranked first. How much do you Shield know about the Hand? Not too much, not too little. What's the matter? Did you have a conflict with them? Their guys just tore down my bar. What do you think? From Kane's tone, Phil heard serious dissatisfaction. He owed him a favor before, and the Hand Association is not a high-level information for Shield. He gritted his teeth and replied, well, they have existed in New York for some years, but because they have only collected money to kill people and have not done anything out of the ordinary, Shield has not paid much attention to them. I can only call out some of their stories here. Old data. Haven't done anything outrageous. What if I said that their people were all parasitized by demons? Kane sneered. I'm afraid it's not because he didn't pay attention, but because there's nothing he can do about them madmen. The Shield does not do such stupid things. This kind of undead creatures are the most troublesome. Before they figure out their weaknesses, no one dares to offend them easily. After all, even if you don't be afraid, what about your family and friends? Who knows if they will be killed by some lunatics with a knife at their door one day? What, devil, are you kidding me? Phil's expression changed a bit. It's the police and the FBI's job for some killers to collect money to kill people. They have no control over Shield, but it's their job to have humans parasitized by demons, yes, and it's the worst kind. Phil, you know I'm a mage. Do you think I'm going to make fun of this? Kane must let Phil know the seriousness of the problem, so that they will help him sincerely instead of using some old information. Perfunctory him. As a level 8 agent, Phil already knew Kane's true ability from the mission report in Afghanistan, so he still has a sense of trust in his mysterious ability, a demon who can know what it looks like, and how did it parasitize on the human body. I want to know too, so I need your help. Phil thought about it carefully, and gave Kane an affirmative answer. Okay, I'll sort out the information about the Hand and give it to you, and we'll discuss what to do then. Okay, I'll wait for you at the bar. Seeing that Kane hung up the phone, Matt came over and said gratefully, Kane, this is actually a private matter between Erica and me, and it is too much trouble for you. Kane looked at Matt and smiled. They paid money to take my life. You said it's none of my business. Moreover, their abilities are too scary for ordinary people. I'm afraid even the Shield. There is no way to stop them from killing their targets, and besides, they can create so many ninjas. How do you know they won't create more ninjas? So we all have to root out this organization. What you said makes sense, but do you have a way to solve the problem of not being able to kill them? Matt asked with a bit of a headache. He didn't know that the ninja killed by the bone dagger could no longer be resurrected. Erica just told Kane all she knew about the resurrection process of the ninjas, so, through these materials and personal contact, he came to a conclusion. Their resurrection is all through a substance in the body, and the resurrection ceremony must be carried out in a specific place, which means that this substance is likely to return to a certain place in the end, and only there can they be resurrected. I think, if we can find the resurrection place, we should be able to find a way to completely restore it. Destroy these lunatics. Of course, there is one thing Kane didn't say. He felt that he could obtain a lot of high-quality spirits there. Only this little. Early in the morning, Kane sat in front of the window that had just had the glass replaced, flipping through a thin piece of information that Phil brought, and looked at him suspiciously. Kane, you have to understand that S.H.I.E.L.D. is only responsible for dealing with special matters, and this matter has to be related to human safety. Higher killer organizations like the Hand are run by the FBI, and at most they can at the level of the CIA. We can have their information because of their weird way of death. Phil was also a little embarrassed. He almost rummaged through the information room last night, and only found so little about the Hand. Data of. Okay, Kane resigned. The S.H.I.E.L.D. How can the United States easily obtain all the intelligence of a country and act recklessly? Wouldn't the US government worry about any accidents in SHIELD? The ability to dispatch armed forces, so he can understand that SHIELD does not have much information on some matters involving ordinary crimes. How accurate is the information? Kane asked, looking at the photos in the file bag. Don't worry about this, it's all collected by the intelligence personnel in the Bureau. Phil is confident in this aspect, and SHIELD is not in vain in terms of intelligence. Well, I think we need to visit these guys, Kane said, picking up the last photo, which was the shrine-like headquarters of the Hand. In the middle of the night, there were few pedestrians on the street, but the roof opposite the shrine was full of people. More than a dozen automatic weapons were aimed at the shrine, and it was Coulson who led the SHIELD. Subordinate Melinda May. Kane looked at Coulson, who was facing an enemy, and asked, "Is it necessary to bring so many people?" Of course it's not necessary if it's an ordinary killer organization, but you also know that the opponent this time is a demon. If it weren't for the fear of being slowed down by the low combat effectiveness, I would like to bring all the agents from the entire New York branch. Coulson also said, putting on the combat uniform of SHIELD and holding a sniper rifle in his hand, he is not an ordinary civilian. Before joining SHIELD, he also served in the U.S. Army Rangers. Of course, they are definitely not the protagonists tonight. The four of Kane and Matt are the main force, and Coulson and the others are only in charge of long-range cover. Okay, let's go. After the words fell, a layer of bone armor covered Kane's body. As his cultivation level improved, the strength of the bone armor also increased, and even the appearance changed. Some sharp bone spurs appeared at the joints of the bone armor, which gave the bone armor a certain melee ability while defending. Matt, who turned into Daredevil, and Erica, who changed into tights, ran with him to the shrine, and Morena followed closely behind with a bone bow. Gotcha. The gate of the shrine was split by Kane again, and he began to feel that he had the potential to become a battering ram. The ninjas of the Hand were also a little confused. As a frightening killer organization, there would be a day when someone broke into the door. This caused them to react after a moment of shock, and immediately rushed to the place waving weapons from all directions. The direction of the main entrance. Japanese people like to be arty, and this shrine is no exception. In Manhattan, where every inch of land is expensive, they also set aside an open space as a yard. The ninjas rushed out of the house, and Kane immediately stopped him and wanted to meet them. Matt and Erica. Don't worry, wait for the bullet. Kane smiled at them. It's not that they couldn't deal with these guys, but that they cooperated with Frank a lot, and Kane also learned some simple tactical cooperation. Puff puff puff, countless rifle bullets flew over the heads of Kane and the others, and after penetrating the bodies of those ninjas, they punched small holes in the ground of the yard unabated. This was Coulson's support firepower, although in order not to cause panic, a silencer was added, but the military's powerful warheads still succeeded in turning these ninjas into fly ash. Based on the principle of not using it for nothing, Kane and the others waited at the door for 5 minutes before no more ninjas came out to die. This opening is the result Kane concluded through his contact with the Hand and his own analysis. These Hand ninjas are all parasitized by demons, and the lower-level ninjas are parasitized in a simpler and rougher way. They are like consumables, constantly charging and fighting for their lives, and even loses the ability to think. In contrast, those ninjas at the leader level have some wisdom. Of course, the more demon organizations parasitized on them, the stronger they are. Kane suspects that there is a demon hidden in the core of the Hand, and he controls the entire Hand in this parasitic way, and his purpose is to kill this demon and absorb enough spirit from it. The SHIELD has completed their mission. All the low-level ninjas who rushed out of the house were shot dead in the yard, and those who stayed in the house and hadn't appeared must be the elite of the Hand. They rushed in with Kane. Inside, the real battle has just begun. As soon as they entered the house, several well-equipped ninjas rushed out. Judging from their weapons, they were obviously not those miscellaneous soldiers with standard weapons, and their skills were definitely not inferior to those who attacked the bar that night, those two ninja bosses. Not only that, these elite ninjas can finally use their brains. They didn't swarm up like those miscellaneous soldiers, but cooperated according to the weapons they were good at. In addition to the 8 ninjas who entangled them, there were 6 other ninjas. People used shurikens from a distance to assist their companions in attacking, which caused a little trouble for Kane and the others. At this moment, the little boy was also watching the battle in front of the monitor with two subordinates. One of them said angrily, "These guys have become the lackeys of the government, together with S.H.I.E.L.D. they defeated so many of us. It doesn't matter how many people die. As long as I'm still around, no one will be able to destroy the hand. If they come back for revenge, they will continue to submit and turn a blind eye to us. It's not the first day that this kind of thing happened. Now, why are you so angry?" The little boy reprimanded indifferently. His eyes were all on the four people who were fighting. "Yes." The subordinate who just spoke quickly lowered his head to admit his mistake, but he raised his head again and said, "Sir, why don't we temporarily retreat like before, and wait here for them to knock on the door? I'm waiting for someone, a more perfect body than Erica." The little boy's words surprised his hands. As the core of the Hand Association, they knew what kind of existence was inside the little boy's body. However, they also know that every once in a while, that existence must change a body. Originally, Erica was the next body in that existence, and it was a great body that could not be changed for a long time. With a better choice, perhaps, the ultimate goal they have been looking forward to can be realized. Phew, Kane's bone dagger slammed into the chest of a ninja. Although these elite ninjas are more powerful than ordinary soldiers, they are still no match for Kane. If Kane didn't want to waste the energy in their body's demon soul body, they have already suffered casualties. Not surprisingly, a pure spirit was transmitted from the bone dagger into Kane's body, which also made him work harder. As his partner, Morena naturally understood it, and trapped him with the precise frost arrow. To live those elite ninjas, so that Kane's soul can be harvested, with the improvement of Kane's strength, she also obviously felt the changes in herself. The power of the elemental arrows is getting stronger and stronger, and the aiming time is getting shorter and shorter. Even, she had a vague feeling of merging with the arrows she shot. Whoosh, whoosh, Morena just took a glance, and the two arrows shot in a row precisely flew a dart towards Erica, and nailed the palm of the dart ninja to the wall. A chill from the ice blue arrow spread along the ninja's palm to the wall, and a thick layer of solid ice fixed his entire arm to death. No matter how much he slashed with a knife, he couldn't shatter that piece solid ice. "Thank you." Erica smiled at Morena and kicked the enemy in front of her. Although she has not yet been able to kill an opponent, she is also able to handle the enemy's multiple attacks with ease, proving herself still have certain strength. However, compared with Matt, she is still a bit behind. Matt, who seems blind, is actually the hero among the four who is second only to Kane in perception. Various sound waves are transmitted in the room, and finally fed back to Matt. In Tay's ears, he can see the situation of the whole room at a glance as if he has opened the perspective of God, and it is impossible for anyone to sneak up on him quietly. There was the unbelieving ninja, who saw Matt's hood covering his eyes, approached him secretly from the roof, and then fell down silently, with the dagger in his hand piercing straight into the top of his head. Call. As soon as he fell halfway, a thick guide stick came out from nowhere and slammed on him fiercely. The ninja, who had nowhere to exert himself, was completely thrown out, and then his chest hurt, and he turned into a flying stick. It was Kane who was waiting for him accurately with the bone dagger. After absorbing it, he even gave Matt a thumbs up happily. In addition to them, there is another person who has a keen sense of Kane killing elite ninjas, that is the little boy in the monitoring room. He is now clutching his chest tightly, enduring the pain from the depths of his soul. You can't show your weak side in front of your subordinates. Although these subordinates have been parasitized by him, in order to ensure their combat effectiveness, the little boy still retains part of their souls. Now this part of their souls treats him like a true god. They know that the gods they believe in will also be injured, and the result can only be that they also become demented people like ninja soldiers, which is not what the little boy wants. In order to hide his pain, the little boy couldn't help pointing at Kane on the screen after Kane killed an elite ninja again with a bone dagger. "It's him, he can perfectly integrate with me." "What? It's him? Don't worry, my lord. We'll send all our hidden people to help you catch him," his subordinates said excitedly. "Are you sure?" The little boy was a little skeptical, but until now, the hand had never sent all the elite ninjas, so he was also a little uncertain. Looking again at Kane who was killing all directions on the screen, the subordinate firmly promised, "Don't worry, my lord, even if we are all broken, we will definitely bring him to you." The little boy is now very suspicious of whether it was a mistake for him to parasitize these Japanese people, and he will be broken at every turn. "Do you know that guy can also absorb my soul seeds? He doesn't know who he captures for fusion." From the monitoring, the little boy can see that that guy must also be rushing to absorb his soul, otherwise the way of fighting is definitely not what it is now. Resisting the idea of killing these two idiots, the little boy said, "No, with Daredevil here, our sacrifice is too great, let's withdraw first, and we will find a way to catch him when he is alone. Your Excellency is so sympathetic to us. Okay, I will recall them immediately." A sharp sound of bamboo flute echoed in the room. When the elite ninjas heard the sound, no matter what state they were in, they immediately fled in all directions. Seeing this, Kane quickly shouted, "Catch up with them and catch the mastermind behind the scenes." With the help of the eyes of the spirit, he easily found the escape route of the ninjas. Although the ninjas walked in all directions of the room, the final goal was actually the backyard of the shrine. Kane greeted Matt and the others, immediately took the lead to chase there. At this moment, Coulson on the other side of the street picked up a phone call. It was a call from the SHIELD agents he had placed outside, and it usually meant an emergency. "What? You said that the US military is gathering in this direction. Hell, when did this trivial matter offend the military? What? There is another monster running here, with green skin, about 3 to 4 meters high, my god." The phone in Coulson's hand fell to the ground. He followed a mission a few years ago. It was a super soldier project led by the US military. The purpose was to recreate a perfect super soldier like Captain America. As a result, for various reasons, what finally came to the world was a monster, a huge monster. However, Coulson, who reacted immediately picked up the walkie-talkie and called Kane. In order to cooperate with the operation tonight, SHIELD has equipped Kane and the others with communication equipment. "Kane, please answer if you hear it. Please answer." "I'm here, what's the matter, Phil?" Kane's voice came from the intercom. "Get out immediately, hurry up." "It's impossible, Phil, we're about to reach the core, the demon's soul must be there, if it escapes, who knows when we can catch it again." "Listen to me, Kane, you must get out immediately, there is a sudden incident, a huge monster is running in this direction, that is not something you can fight." "Oh my god." Coulson's last sentence came out of emotion, because a green figure had already crashed out of a building opposite him, jumped into the shrine of the hand, and smashed down the roof of the last big house. A thin figure quietly crawled out from the rubble of the shrine, with a look of horror on his face. "Who did I provoke? Why did I come here again?" The one who spoke was the leader of the little boy of the hand. Now he was so dirty that he looked like a poor doll. As for the two subordinates who stood behind him before, they were already there when the big monster fell. It was hit by the beam and turned into fly ash. "Master Black Sky, are you all right?" Fortunately, the ninjas of the hand had a bond with him, so some survivors found him soon. However, after Kane's pursuit and the monster's attack just now next, there are not many left. Seeing the 2 or 3 big and small cats in front of him, the little boy Haikong wanted to cry. Except for the first time, he had never suffered such a blow. At this point, running away was his only choice. "Go, come on, get out of here quickly." The rest of the elite ninjas had no brains and knew that tonight would be impossible, so they hurriedly protected the little boy Haikong and escaped through the secret passage next to him. And Kane couldn't care less about chasing the group of ninjas from the hand at this moment, because the huge monster that fell from the sky was standing in front of him. "Hulk," Matt exclaimed. He had also heard a little about the monster created by the military accident a few years ago. The monster in front of him was exactly the same as the one described in the news. To achieve exaggerated muscles. "It's not Hulk, but it's even more doomed," Kane said coldly. Matt's eyes couldn't see, but he didn't realize that the monster's skin was not as green as Hulk, but a yellow-green color, and his joints countless sharp bone spurs grew out of him, making him look even more ferocious. What angered Kane the most was that there were some meat scraps hanging on those sharp joints, and there was even a little girl sleeping with a rabbit plush toy at night. Well, the building he drilled out of just now is an apartment, and it's not hard to imagine what happened to the residents there from this monster. "Oh, you think you can kill me just because I'm not the Hulk?" Kane's words got the monster's attention, and it seemed that the Hulk's name was important to him. You look like a superhero in your outfit. It's okay, those ordinary people are too boring to kill. The monster's big ugly face showed a hideous smile, and he walked towards Kane while talking. Then you go die. Kane shot with hatred. He recognized that this monster was Abomination, a guy who could compete with Hulk. If he didn't do his best, he would probably die here, but if he just running away like this, he can't pass the test in his heart. In his heart, he hates the guy who decides the fate of others based on his own likes and dislikes. This is true for gods or demons, and hatred is no exception. This guy was originally a fighter on the battlefield. A cold-blooded killer. After being injected with super soldier serum and Hulk's blood, all his evil thoughts are released, and any life is ignored by him, and killing is just a game he does casually. Command Puppet. Senescence. Bone Spear. A series of spells were issued from Kane's hands, and he also rushed forward holding the bone dagger tightly. The Abomination's skin was as tough as Hulk's. He was not sure what these spells could bring him. Damage, and the sharpest weapon in his hand is the Rothma bone dagger. 3 bone spears flew towards Abomination's head. He, who knew nothing about undead spells, did not dare to ignore these sharp magic creations, and stretched out his arms to block his face. Good opportunity. Kane's eyes lit up, and the blood rush was released immediately, sending his body directly behind Abomination. Then he jumped up high, and the bone dagger in his hand pierced Abomination's back without hesitation. Innocent. At the moment when the bone dagger was about to plunge into the body of Abomination, there was a loud shout, and the body of Abomination twisted around, narrowly dodging the bone dagger, followed by a calf thicker than Kane's body from the side howling too. Boom. There was a loud collision sound, and Kane's body penetrated several layers of walls like a cannonball, and he rolled and lay in the front yard of the shrine. Kane, Matt exclaimed. The situation had changed so much in just a short moment, which caught him off guard. I'm here to hold this monster, you go and see how he is doing. Morena calmly used the bursting arrows to stop the Abomination from continuing to pursue, and asked Matt and the others to take care of Kane. She still has Kai in her body. The power of spirit injected by N shows that he is not dead yet, and as a Jero, keeping calm on the battlefield is a compulsory course for them. Kane, how are you doing, Kane? Matt knew that he was not much help against the Abomination, which was a melee nightmare, so he rushed to Kane's side as fast as he could and helped him up. Hate that blow was too hard. When he helped him, he could feel debris falling from Kane's body. It seemed that the whole bone armor was shattered. PFF'd, a mouthful of blood vomited to the ground, and Kane started to fight with Matt's support. It was the first time he was seriously injured in 2 lifetimes. 2 ribs were broken, and 1 arm was a little weak, but however, he felt that his mind was clearer than ever before. Looking at the toy rabbit bouncing on the back of Abomination who was being harassed by Morena, he seemed to have a little understanding in his heart. Kane, are you okay? Coulson's anxious voice came from the earphones. He is indeed a good old man in shield matter. It's okay, he's still alive. Kane smiled, and motioned to Matt not to support him, but after Matt let go, he still staggered, which was also noticed by Coulson on the roof. Listen to me, you are not his opponent. Retreat first, the military is on the way, they have heavy weapons, this is the trouble they caused, they are more experienced in dealing with it. Phil. Kane stood up straight again, and said calmly, I don't want to know who caused the trouble, are you sure they have a way to deal with this guy? Look at the apartment opposite, in the big hole in the middle. I'm afraid there are not many people left, and all the residents around here, do you think they can wait until the arrival of the military? Phil, I was just an ordinary person before I became a superhero. I can understand their helplessness when disaster strikes. Of course we have a million reasons to leave at this time, but when you fall asleep one day, will you see these ordinary people in your dreams that you might have saved but failed to save? Coulson was silent on the roof. Years of military and secret agent careers have made him used to finding the most reasonable way to deal with it immediately. However, this way may not be suitable for everyone, at least those who are helpless ordinary people are often not in the right category. Phil, if you still treat me as a friend, immediately take your people to evacuate the surrounding ordinary people, and prohibit the military from using weapons of mass destruction in this area. That thing will only kill more people civilian. After speaking, Kane took off the earphones and threw them on the ground, and a brand new bone armor covered his body again, which also concealed his injuries. What are you still doing in a daze? Hurry up and cooperate with the police to evacuate the crowd. Looking at Kane's back, Coulson gritted his teeth and yelled loudly at the surrounding subordinates. Kane's words just now had already been transmitted from the walkie-talkie in the ears of each of them. Everyone ran downstairs without saying a word. They all knew that a superhero had bought them with his life, and they had no right to waste it. "Ha ha, woman, these toothpicks of yours are useless to me." After strengthening, Morena's explosive arrows are powerful enough to match the rockets of the U.S. military, but they are still just tickling for the abomination. If it is not for Kane's aging, the curse made his resistance drop a bit, and he could even ignore these bone arrows. However, that's the end of the curse. It can last for a few minutes on other people, but it can't even last for 30 seconds on the abominable body. When he felt that his strength had recovered, he immediately rushed towards Murray with a grinning grin. Nah. Senescence. Bone Spear. Fortunately, Kane, who arrived in time, added 2 spells to save Morena. Pulling out the bone spear from his arm, Hate looked at Kane and smiled. "Not bad, you are quite strong, just enough to relieve my boredom." Snapped. A red stick hit Abomination's face, and Matt also rushed over, but he didn't dare to fight with Abomination. He just divided the guide stick in his hand into swing sticks, and harassed him from a distance, while Irika followed him, not even knowing what she could do. "Matt, don't stay here, you have more important work. Take Erica to the opposite apartment to see if there are any survivors, evacuate them." Kane hurriedly shouted at Matt. Although Daredevil was also killed, a superhero who has been enhanced by radiation, but he strengthens more of the sensory organs of the body. From the perspective of combat effectiveness, he is limited compared to Frank the Punisher, not to mention Erica. She is not the strongest, and she will not be more difficult to deal with than the US military with guns in the face of hatred. "Okay, you two, be careful." Matt hesitated for a moment, and finally endured the humiliation and agreed. Yes, he and Erica, who are weak, are not even qualified to restrain hatred. This belongs to the strong. Fighting, hoping that his good friend Kane, who has not known him for a long time, can survive. Hee, do you want to save these 2 guys? It's not necessary at all. Their life and death are under my control. They are too weak. I'm not interested in them for the time being. Hate watched Matt, and Ilika didn't stop her from leaving. This is the difference between him and Hulk. After transforming, he still retains most of his intelligence. Whether he kills or not depends entirely on his likes and dislikes. This kind of random killing monster is the most harmful to society, for he acts without any law. Okay, the eyes obscuring guys are gone, come on, let's play the second game. The hatred opened a roof and rushed towards Kane. Podgy, a white cobweb covered his disgusted face, and then a red and blue figure swung from the air and kicked him on the head, causing him to stumble. "You 2 fools, why didn't you call me for this kind of thing? Why, don't you look down on me?" Peter landed on the roof by the reaction force, turned his head and complained to Kane. "What happened here has long been covered, the media broadcasted it, and when the hand was cleared, it was okay to say, the movement was relatively small, and the hatred couldn't be covered up no matter what. Okay, let's finish typing what we have to say. Be careful, this guy is stronger than all the villains you have encountered before." Kane quickly stopped Peter. The big guy on the opposite side is not so easy to deal with, but he didn't letting Peter leave. Spider-Man's ability to resist attacks is still very strong, and having him somewhat increases his chances of winning. Really, this guy is green and looks like Dr. Lizard, but he looks stupid, and his size doesn't mean he's powerful. A stupid bullfrog will become the prey of a small snake in the wild. Peter seemed to be hiding something from Kane. He was a little resentful when he came out, and rushed towards the hatred while releasing his mouth, as if to prove his ability. Boom. The response to Peter was a heavy punch. The hatred was different from any villain he had fought before. Among those people, those with rich combat experience were not as physically powerful as him, and those with strong bodies were mostly scientists who had never had combat experience. That's why it seems that Spider-Man is invincible, but the body of the Abomination is definitely not worse than him, and he does not know how many times stronger in strength. As for combat experience, is there any comparison between a college student with a mouthful and a special soldier who has experienced many battles? The punch just now was that hate attracted Peter with a fake action of removing the spider silk on his face, and then suddenly punched him flying. Looking at Spider-Man, who was smashed into the wall, Hate grinned and said, "Unfortunately, you are just red and blue earthworms. Let's go together," Kane yelled, and together with Morena, they attacked the abomination. With the help of the curse of aging, their bone spears and bone arrows could still pierce the abomination's skin, which made the abomination extremely difficult. Some parrying is not done so that vital organs like eyes are not hit. Just as Kane and the others were dealing with the abomination, a U.S. military helicopter was approaching at high speed. Inside the helicopter was the instigator of the abomination tonight, the leader of the secret research program of the U.S. military, General Thunderbolt Ross, and his team. Daughter Betty, and Betty's sweetheart, the real Hulk Bruce Banner. As the host of the Super Soldier Project, General Ross has fallen into a demonic path, and he will not let go of any possibility. This also led Bruce Banner to take risks for this, using gamma rays to promote the transformation of Super Soldier Serum. Unfortunately, it was not another Captain America who came out in the end, but the uncontrollable monster Hulk. After the transformation, Bruce Banner was also distressed because he would be separated from his lover forever. No one knew that one day he would kill Betty after the transformation. You know, the one who died in his hands. Human lives are already in double digits. In order to change all this, Bruce Banner was constantly looking for a solution even after leaving the United States, so he contacted another scientist in New York, Samuel Stern, who provided some hypotheses which were known to Bruce. The most reliable, but without Hulk's blood, they can't confirm whether this hypothesis is valid. In the end, the lovesick Bruce finally couldn't help sneaking back to New York. However, this incident was finally discovered by General Ross, who had been following him. Bruce, who was purified by a large amount of blood, finally temporarily lost his ability to transform, and was arrested by General Ross, but the cold-blooded soldier Emil Bronsky, who he summoned to capture Bruce, faced Hulk's blood, but his heart was moved. He had lost almost all of his humanity during his many years of war career. For him, only fighting and killing with stronger ones could arouse his interest. Because he was defeated by Hulk many times before, Bronsky finally couldn't hold back his desire to become stronger, and forced Dr. Stern with a gun to inject Hulk's blood into his body, which contains a lot of mutated gamma energy. Fused with the unfinished version of the super soldier serum in his body, it finally became what it is now, a terrifying killing monster abomination. "Bruce, you can't go, you don't have the ability to transform. 10 minutes ago," Betty said tearfully while grabbing Bruce's clothes. "Love is blind." Banner saw the news of the abomination raging in New York on the helicopter, guessed his origin, and wanted to go back and stop him. "This is the responsibility of both of us." Bruce looked at General Ross and said to Betty. General Ross was also silent. He is a federal general. Although he is a bit stubborn, he still loves his country and people. It is not what he wants to let the hatred kill everywhere in New York. At present, only the transformed Bruce they can stop him. Although Bruce can't transform now, taking a gamble is their only option. "Turn around, go back." Under the command of General Ross, the helicopter immediately turned around and flew towards the direction where the abomination appeared. The helicopter finally came over the shrine. General Ross and the others all saw the scene below. Spider-Man was flying up and down to attract the attention of the abomination, while Kane and Morena were trying their best to break through his defense. Spider-Man is here too. Who are those two, the new superheroes? For General Ross, catching the Hulk for research is the only meaning of his life, so for Kane, who just appeared not long ago, he always "I don't know." No matter who they are fighting for the civilians. I have to go down and help them. They won't last long. Bruce has seen the power of abomination from the helicopter video. In all fairness, it is definitely not worse than his transformation. He originally came back with the idea of sacrificing himself, but seeing the 3 Spider-Mons below, he felt that his chances of winning might be better. "Open the hatch." The rear hatch of the helicopter opened slowly. Bruce looked back at his crying girlfriend, kissed her hard, turned and jumped off. The sound of the wind whistled past his ears. Bruce stared at the top of the hated head, and shouted anxiously in his heart, "Hurry up, come out." Things and people's imaginations often run counter to each other. Even the Hulk is not immune. With a loud bang, a big hole appeared on the ground behind Kane and the others, and dust was flying. "Hey, is the US military so unreliable? It's fine if you don't help. What's the point of throwing a bag of garbage? Peter complained. I also met a monster. He felt that his internal organs were a little displaced, and the fist of hatred was not so easy to catch. Ow! A sky-shattering roar came from the cave, and then a huge green figure jumped out from there, screaming up to the sky, and Bruce finally turned back into Hulk again. Hulk, you are finally here. Great, only you are worth fighting with me. Come on, don't hide behind these reptiles, fight me head on, I will prove who is the most powerful in the world, the powerful one. Seeing the roaring Hulk, his hatred was also aroused. The reason why he was willing to become such a man and ghost was to defeat and kill Hulk, and Kane and the others. To him it's just a game. The loathing slapped away Peter, who was sneaking up from behind, and covered his head with his arms and rushed towards Hulk. The buildings along the way couldn't even hinder him in the slightest. Bruce, who turned into Hulk, had already lost most of his sanity, but the remaining one made him believe that the abomination was his enemy. He roared at the abomination again, and also rushed over with great strides. Boom! The four fists intersected, and a shock wave spread out. All the wooden buildings in the Handa shrine fell to the outside and flew out. An open space appeared in the entire shrine centered on the two giants. The two used this as the stage. A desperate struggle began. The battle has entered a fierce stage from the very beginning. Before the transformation, the abomination didn't have much humanity left. After the transformation, his evil thoughts were magnified to the extreme. He flexibly used the bone spurs at the joints to attack Hulk's vital points, clearly wanting his life. As for the Hulk, he is also not a good stubble. After losing his mind, he can only fight with instinct. However, this is the most effective method, because Bruce Banner doesn't know much about fighting. You can't expect a scientist to also be a fighting master. He dodged the fatal attack of hatred with instinct, and then punched the ugly face of hatred with his own fist. However, what made Kane and the others frustrating was that they, who were still able to attack together, were a little idle now, because Hulk's body was really too big, and his body, which was only a little smaller than Abomination, blocked most of the opponent's body. This also makes Kane and Morena lose their attack angle. This is not a game, it is impossible for them to jump over Hulk's body to attack the Abomination. During the fight between the two big guys, Peter couldn't even give support from above. Something unexpected happened. The accident came faster than they expected. It didn't take long for the battle between the two big guys to be decided. Hulk, who fought by instinct, was still inferior to hate after all. Bronski's fighting skills and the battlefield, the killing experience allowed him to slowly suppress the Hulk, who only knew how to dash and fight. Even an angry scientist could not easily defeat a seasoned warrior. Kane remembered that the angrier Hulk was, the stronger he became, but now that he has been pumped of countless blood, he seems to have no anger and no increase in strength. He hated a knee bump, and the bone spur on his knee was deeply inserted into Hulk's abdomen. Just when Hulk was about to pull himself out, a heavy uppercut hit his chin firmly again. Boom! Hulk, who flew high and fell heavily, collapsed, the only remaining half of the room in the shrine. Hate smiled grinningly as he walked. Tisk tisk, Hulk, why are you so weak? It's a pity that you are so majestic here. Your bravery has come to an end, and under the same mutation, you are nothing more than a wild beast that only acts on instinct. Roar! As if in response to the comment of hating the beast, after a roar, Hulk jumped out of the ruins again and fought with him. At this moment, Matt jumped off from a nearby building and quickly walked to Kane. Why are you back? Kane frowned. This place is really not suitable for Matt. The residents in the apartment have been evacuated, and the army has surrounded the place. How about it? Can you subdue that guy? Kane looked at the two big guys who were fighting together again, shook his head and said, I'm not very optimistic. If there are no special circumstances, Hulk may not be the opponent of the other guy. Then what should we do? Matt was in a hurry. Looking at the current scene, the army might be of no use unless missiles and other weapons were used. Looking up at the ruined pink children's room in the hole in the apartment, white flames began to rise from Kane's body, and he said in a cold voice, if nothing special happens, then let me come create a special situation. Kane, you. Peter and the others saw the abnormality on Kane's body, and hurriedly asked. Leave me alone, let's go help Hulk together, we must not let that guy go. As soon as the words fell, Kane cast Blood Rush and teleported to the side of the abomination. Risking being hit, he waved the bone scythe fiercely. He slashed fiercely on Abomination's leg. Although the bone dagger was sharp, it was too short. He couldn't find a chance in their fight. Therefore, he simply summoned the two-handed bone scythe to attack Abomination's Exeasanlu, fighting for it. Reduce his mobility. Peter and the others were also infected by Kane's recklessness, and they tried their best to attack the Abomination. Although the damage was not great, at least it caused him a lot of trouble and gave Hulk a chance to breathe. Scum, your stupid behavior can't change anything. Their behavior finally angered the Abomination completely. After repelling Hulk again, he began to turn his attention to Spider-Man and the others. Stab it. The hatred that became serious found the weakness of several people in an instant. He first turned his fist into an elbow, and slashed Peter's chest fiercely with the bone spur from his elbow. But even so, there was a deep scar on his chest. Boom. The next unlucky one was Matt. Hate grabbed his swinging stick and pulled it back. The other fist came into close contact with his body fiercely, knocking him far away. Erica, who was watching the battlefield outside, rushed over with an exclamation. It seemed that Matt would not be able to come back in a short time. Of course, the Abomination will never forget Kane, who took the lead. After a light elbow was dodged by Kane, the hidden ultimate move finally made a move. He has made up his mind to kill an annoying little thing. See, it's good to be the one who takes the lead. It seems that he has been playing tricks on the side because he has been unable to use all his strength. Knee bump is one of the most commonly used tactical moves on the battlefield, but it contains great lethality. It is one of the best moves to make the enemy quickly lose combat power at close range, because its suddenness is unmatched by other moves. Blonsky was very good at this trick when he was still a human being. Often after the enemy bent down after being hit by a knee, what awaited him was the dagger that Blonsky inserted into the back of the head. After transforming into an Abomination, Blonsky's move is even stronger, because he has the long bone spur protruding from his knee, and he no longer needs to make up for the enemy. At this moment, that sinister move was used on Kane. Kane, who had just avoided the elbow, had no time to dodge this move, and because of the height problem, the bone spur was aimed at Kane's head. Careful. Seeing the sharp bone spurs magnified in front of his eyes, a soft shout sounded in Kane's ears, and then a strong force hit his shoulder, knocking him sideways. Puff. The long bone spurs were mercilessly inserted into a slender body, and the tip of the bone spurs protruded through the body. Kane was shocked. It was Morena. With a grinning grin, he grabbed Morena's body and threw it out. Kane immediately rushed over with blood and hugged her body. His mind was blank, and he stared blankly at the female warrior in his arms, saying nothing. Seeing an opportunity, the Abomination immediately rushed towards him, ready to finish him off once and for all, but unfortunately, the Hulk who got up from the ground knocked him into the air, and continued to wrestle with him. Hulk's roar finally awakened Kane, and he hurriedly gathered the power of the spirit in his hands to repair Morena's body, but a big hand grabbed his wrist in time. Hey, big boy, now is not the time to waste your soul on me. If we can't solve that big guy, we will all die in the end. Morena smiled at Kane, and the blood at the corner of her mouth couldn't affect her beautiful face. The Nephilim in my memory is not so weak, and the priest of Rothma has always been the most powerful mage. Boy, don't let me down. Yeah, you're right. Dazed for a moment, Kane gently put Morena down and let her lean on a wooden stake so that she could see the battle situation. Morena, you rest first. After a while, I'll come back to help you after I finish that guy. Kane took a deep look at Morena, then stood up, stretched out his hands facing the hatred, and the white flame that had just ignited on him reappeared, and it became more and more intense. Kane has never tried his best in casting spells. He has always hoped that one day he can save enough spirits to send to Rothma so that he can use his power to return to his own world, because he has always regarded this world as a world. The world of movies or games, although sometimes emotional, but never really integrated into it. Therefore, no matter what the situation is, there is always a part of the spirit in his body, and he has been trying to contact Rothma, but for some reason it has never been successful. But tonight was different. He saw Morena was pierced by hatred in order to protect him, and the feeling of pain and sadness filled his heart. The villagers who were massacred by the Ten Commandments gang, and the rabbit doll he saw just now, had a voice shouting in his heart, "This is a real world, they are all real lives, and you are the same, and you will be hurt as well." The same will die, and the same will hurt the people around you because of your weakness, and this is not because you are not capable enough, but because you have been you are evading your responsibilities in this world. Then, tonight, I'll try to see what step I can do. The spirit in Cain's body began to work unreservedly for the first time. He wanted to release a spell that he hadn't fully mastered, and he had to use all his strength. Come and slay the most powerful enemy, the abomination. Cain raised his hands up slowly, and the two largest groups of white flames converged in his palms. With this movement, his head was slowly lifted into the sky, and at the same time, he was still chanting the spell. The spirit is the kindling that ignites life. I use all the spirits to call out to you heroes who protect the world and the fate of mankind, please follow my call and come back from another world. The dead return, and the living will perish. With the end of the last incantation, a gray-white ball of fire appeared above Cain's head, pale faces emerged in the fireball, and there were even scenes of battles in it. Peter opened his mouth wide. Watching this scene, although Matt couldn't see it, he also felt a terrifying force gathering above Cain's head. Priests of Rothma are spellcasters who walk between life and death. The way of balance they have learned and mastered is not so much a spell, but a way of communicating with the world of death. Blood and bones, spirit and soul, these energies constitute their all spells. And the reason why they are called necromancers by the world is because only they can communicate with the dead souls and let them return to the world. Most of the ultimate spells of the priests of Rothma are related to this, and the spell brewed by Cain is no exception. The name of this spell is Mage Resurrection. Its difficulty lies in that mages have always been the most proud professionals, even if they die after that, they didn't want to let go of their dignity and be called around. The original Mage Resurrection technique summoned skeleton mages, and those skeletons who released a single low-level spell with bone sticks were nothing more than mage apprentices before they were alive, so they were summoned by Rothma priests in large numbers. When facing the Devil King of Hell, these skeleton mages were as fragile as fallen leaves on the roadside, and could not help priest Rothma at all. Therefore, like the summoning of bones, Rothma also modified this spell, allowing Rothma priests to communicate with the deceased mage spirits of various sects and summon them. However, this difficulty is much greater than that of bone summoning and puppet summoning. There are too many, how could the noble mages be willing to let anyone summon them? When the rank of the priests of Rothma is not enough, summoning some mage spirits that do not match the strength will even cause the priests to be disabled or killed. Therefore, Rothma it is also strictly defined that this spell must be cast with the rank of Necromancer Master. It can even be said that this spell is the watershed between official priests and Necromancer Masters. Cain no longer cares about these restrictions, he just wants to kill the abomination now, and this spell is the only one he can release beyond the level. The cloud of spirits was constantly gathering, but just like when he summoned the puppet, Cain couldn't communicate with the mage spirits. When he was anxious, he thought of the coat of arms that summoned Morena. He mobilized part of the power of the spirit and quietly injected it into the coat of arms on his chest, while still maintaining the magic power of the mage's resurrection. Sure enough, that warm feeling rose in his chest again, and a wave of golden energy began to operate according to the mana trajectory of the mage's resurrection, and the mana cloud above Cain's head was also dyed golden. When the mana circuit was completed, a brand new world suddenly unfolded in Cain's mind. It was a world of nothingness, and there were countless souls floating in it. They either bowed their heads and chanted some spells there, or what kind of spell model is constructed between the hands. This is the Hall of Valor for the mages. Cain couldn't care less about delving into the world, he needed to communicate with a powerful mage who could kill the abomination as soon as possible. First, a mage heroic spirit holding a sword and shield responded to Cain's perception, but he gave up as soon as he came into contact with him. This is the mercenary mage in the Iron Wolf Mercenary Guild. They are better than the former skeleton mages. They have no access to the true meaning of magic with a single intermediate spell. Another mage came over, this time the Zakaram sect mages. They are a group of mages who replaced the Horadrim sect, and once suppressed Mephisto, a Pierce-level demon. Such experience is enough to prove their spell's cultivation base, but Cain was hesitant. After all, they failed to resist the erosion of the devil in the end and became the minions of the devil. Finally, Cain found a group of mages who released the spells he was familiar with, such as Ice Storm, Thunder Cloud, and Meteorite. Those were Cadian mages. Riel sealed the three Diablo brothers. Just when Cain wanted to communicate with these Cadian mages, a lonely figure in the distance suddenly entered his eyes. Saying that he is studying spells is more like doing calculation exercises, and he is so out of tune with other mages. For some unknown reason, Cain suddenly felt that that was the mage he was looking for, and there was not much time left for him, so he guided the power of the spirit into that figure without hesitation. A large amount of spirit power made the figure gradually full and clear. The figure stood up and looked back at Cain. Only then did he realize that this is a female heroic spirit, and she looks only in her teens. Could it be that he chose the wrong one? Just when Cain had a hint of doubt, the heroic spirit spoke. Nephilim, Priest Rothma, do you want to summon me? Without waiting for Cain to answer, she shook her head and said, you are too weak, these spirit powers can't even support me to cast a spell. Cain was overjoyed at first. Heroic spirit would not lie. From her words he could tell that this was a powerful mage, but he was nervous again. This was already all his soul. If he could not support the other party to release a spell, then even if the mage resuscitation failed this time, after deducting most of the spirits, it would still cause magic backlash against him. In this way, the hope of defeating the abomination is even more slim. Suddenly, he remembered what teacher Rasma taught him when teaching him this spell. Summoning a mage spirit that does not match the strength will cause disability or death, but he did not say that this spell will fail because of this. That is to say, when the power is insufficient, it is not impossible to complete the spell, but it needs more things to support the spell. After thinking about the injured friends like Morena and Matt, the innocent residents who died in the apartment, and the ignorant civilians in New York City, Cain immediately made a decision. He increased the speed of the output of the soul again, and at the same time began to run the blood and bone spells. Noble mage heroic spirit, I summon your coming with my soul, my blood, and my bones to punish you. Enemy in sight. With the chanting of this incantation, Cain's skin shriveled at a speed visible to the naked eye, his hair lost its luster, and his eyes began to dim, but he kept his previous posture motionless. With a red and white alternate energy was injected into the mana cloud above his head, and these two colors were mixed into the golden piece. After the color change, the cloud cluster moved faster and faster, and gradually expanded outward, forming a ring, and a hole appeared in the space in the middle of the ring, and the light passing through it would be distorted. At the moment when the void was created, in an ancient building at 177A Bleecker Street in Manhattan, a middle-aged man suddenly raised his head and looked in the direction where Cain and the abomination were fighting. Master Daniel, what happened? The two young men beside the man saw his strange behavior and asked quickly. Someone connected to another dimension. What? At this moment, a golden flashing circle suddenly appeared in the space behind the man called Master Daniel, and a person in a yellow hooded suit stepped out of the circle of light. The three people present seemed to know him, bowed to him. Master Gu Yi. On a verdant prairie, a stone house stands there alone, and a white-haired man sits cross-legged in front of the stone house, meditating quietly. Suddenly, in midair not far in front of the man, a small golden ring appeared out of thin air, and a ray of red and white energy drilled out of the ring, approaching the white-haired man. With a swish, without any movement, the man sitting cross-legged on the ground appeared in front of the ring, stretched out his hand and gently guided the energy into his palm. When the energy finally touched his skin, it penetrated in immediately without any hindrance. He closed his eyes and felt it quietly, as if drinking a glass of wine worth aftertaste. However, before he had time to be intoxicated for a second, he opened his eyes again, frowning at the ray of energy. How can there be energy of blood and bones? Rothma said to himself. He was very happy when this trace of energy appeared, because it meant that this space was no longer perfect, and it was still hopeful that the one who broke the blockade from the outside, and 1989 as the child he rescued from the seven lords of hell. He was able to transmit the power of the spirit here in such a short period of time. He is also grateful for the youngest disciple he has accepted. Be proud. However, when he sensed that this ray of energy was mixed with blood and bone strength, he knew that something must have happened to Cain. Priest Rothma's spells were clearly distinguished from each other, and rarely needed three kinds of energy are used at the same time, and generally this kind of situation means that Priest Rothma has reached the critical point of life and death, and must mobilize all his energy to survive. Thinking of this, Rothma stretched out his finger without hesitation, scratched his palm with a sharp nail, and a drop of blood floated out from the wound. He pushed hard, and the drop of blood fell from the ring in midair. At the same time, he lightly wiped the ring with his palm, and the golden ring disappeared. He looked up at the empty sky, returned to the front of the house and sat cross-legged again, as if nothing had happened just now, but a wave of spirit energy had already started to flow slowly in his body. In just a moment, the drop of Rothma's blood traveled through countless dimensions and came to Cain, and quietly seeped into his body from the coat of arms on his chest. Cain, who had been immersed in communicating with the mage's heroic spirit, they didn't realize that his gradually depleted and aging body gradually returned to normal, even stronger than before. Cain only felt that there was an extra wave of energy in his already exhausted body. He didn't care about thinking about the origin of this energy, so he directly mobilized it and injected it into the body of the mage hero. This energy is not particularly conspicuous, just like Cain's own blood injected into it. However, as soon as this energy entered the body of the mage heroic spirit, the light on her body suddenly flourished, a feeling that she hadn't experienced for a long time. The familiar feeling from the past returned to her body. She looked at her palm-like substance in surprise, closed her eyes again and felt the real surge of magic power. She couldn't help being excited. Coulson and the others have almost evacuated the surrounding residence. After instructing the police who came to reinforce to stop the curious citizens, he also ran back with the shield to deal with it, but his conscience made him run back firmly and powerfully. Behind them, soldiers with live ammunition were also gathering in this direction. When they arrived at the Shrine of the Hand, they were all dumbfounded. Two green giants were fighting in the distance, and a cloud was spreading above Cain's head. A figure was walking out of the cloud. It's not an illusion. Following the movement of that figure, Coulson and the others felt as if their bodies were about to float. Master, do you want to make a move? Behind Coulson, on the roof where they used to stay, Master Daniel and Master Ji stood here at some point, watching the figure walking out of the clouds. Master Daniel couldn't help but want a weapon drawn. No, wait a minute. Master Ji, who was still wearing a yellow hood, reached out to stop him. I didn't feel any malice from that space, and the person who was summoned didn't look like those who were full of destructive intentions. Biology, let's take another look. The little girl finally walked out of the mana cloud, suspended in the air, and the cloud disappeared. Plop, Cain fell to the ground as if he had collapsed. The feeling of losing his spirit power was really uncomfortable. Who is the enemy? A voice sounded in Cain's mind. Well, it seems that the summoned object is connected with him as a normal state, and he doesn't care about these details, just staring at the abominable figure. He replied in his mind, that's him, the monster who ignores life. When the little girl looked at the abomination, Hulk was knocked down by him again, and the bone spur even made him bleed green blood. A giant who is proficient in fighting is really terrifying. Ha ha ha, Hulk, even you are no longer my opponent. I am the most powerful person in this world. Oh, invincible is so lonely. Let me think about it. By the way, it seems that there are still people in this world, many superheroes, although I think they are weak like ordinary people. Maybe there are powerful beings. How can we let them come out? How about killing all the people on Manhattan Island? I think they will definitely come out, right? Huh. Hate stepped on Hulk and laughed at him. After hearing what he said, Hulk roared at him, but he couldn't break free from his strong big feet. Hey, that monster who is neither human nor ghost, do you think you are the strongest person? Don't be ridiculous. Maybe you are very powerful, but you are not considered a person, and you are definitely not the strongest one. See this little sister well, she is 100 times stronger than you, no matter in terms of appearance or strength. Afraid that Hulk would have any accidents, Cain taunted. Abomination looked in the direction where the voice came from, and he saw the sorcerer who had been casting spells to make himself weak was lying on the ground, and beside him was a little girl floating in midair, with shoulder-length hair simply tied behind her head, looking at him quietly, while her little hands were crossed towards her, as if she was preparing some trick. It's you, that nasty mage. Why, did you call your sister here to gain sympathy? Hee hee, well, let's start with her. I believe a little girl dismembered in midair will attract those superheroes. He stomped on Hulk's head in disgust, jumped into the air with the reaction force, and rushed towards Cain and the little girl. The little girl was getting closer and closer in his sight, but it was strange that she didn't look flustered, but looked at the hatred in midair and showed a beautiful smile. Chapter 51. Don't piss off the mystics. you are just a speck of dust in front of their anger, and you will be wiped out in the blink of an eye. The little girl said this with a smile as if chatting with a friend. Disintegration ray. As soon as the words were finished, a beam of red light shot out from the little girl's crossed hands. The beam of light was as thick as the wrist, showing a brilliant red color as a whole, and shot to the chest of the abomination in an instant. This is a pure energy ray. Except for the dazzling red, there is no trace of energy leaking out, there is neither sound nor explosion, but I hate the impact of this ray on the skin that even the bone spear has never penetrated. It melted like a white snow meeting a flame. The ray penetrated his skin, burned through his muscles, and even opened a big hole in his spine, which was harder than alloy steel, and finally pierced through his body. And pass. The grinning hatred didn't even know what happened. A red light flashed in front of his eyes. He only felt a pain, and there was a big hole in his chest. He kept that expression and fell down like a kite with a broken string. Seeing the hatred was getting closer and closer to her, the little girl frowned, gathered a cloud of blue energy in her hands, and threw it towards him. After a spell explosion, the hatred flew upside down and landed beside Hulk. Hulk didn't know whether the abomination was dead or alive. He roared and rushed over, strangled his neck, and lifted it up fiercely, preparing to separate his corpse and finish this monster completely. Stop. The helicopter hovering in the sky landed at some point, and it was Hulk's future father-in-law, General Ross, who was calling. He made the right choice, but that doesn't mean that he will give up such a research-worthy material of abomination. If the abomination can be mass-produced, it will be a major progress in the Super Soldier project. As for the ugly and perverted things, it is not up to General Ross at all. In my consideration, the big deal is to find those condemned prisoners to be transformed, and after the transformation, throw them at the enemy and it's over. When did the US military talk about humanitarianism? Hulk, who retained a sliver of sanity, glanced at Betty who was standing beside General Ross, and finally let go of his thick arm. He subconsciously didn't want to make it difficult for his sweetheart. The body of the loathsome slid to the ground, with a big hole in his chest. There was no sign of life, but no one dared to say that he was dead. After all, he was a replica of Hulk, an undead monster. Even such a strong gamma ray neither could kill the Hulk. No one believed that such a simple ray could kill the abomination. The little girl mage didn't explain anything. When the abomination fell beside Hulk, she returned to the coat of arms on Kane's chest. Through telepathic communication, Kane learned that the power of the spirit he provided was not enough to maintain the small body. The girl's entity has existed in this world for a long time, so she needs to temporarily return to the heroic spirit space, but she also found that there seems to be a small heroic spirit space in the coat of arms on Kane's chest, which is just right for her to live in, and such a come on, when Kane summons her again, he doesn't have to work hard to open a dimensional channel again. However, General Ross was not the only one who wanted to get the abomination. Facing Coulson who ran to his side to help him up, Kane whispered in his ear, "Phil, help me get the abomination." Is an agent an agent? Even after hearing such an exaggerated request, Coulson still showed concern for Kane, and then said calmly, "How is it possible? Our relationship with the military is not very good, and General Ross is notoriously stubborn. Think about it, Phil, I've been doing white jobs for you. To be honest, the little girl I just summoned has exhausted all the mana, and I must replenish it as soon as possible, and hatred is the best tonic," Kane said, looking at Coulson. Facing Kane's direct gaze, Coulson moved his eyes away. This matter is too important. Even Nick Fury may have a headache here, let alone him. You must know that the US military has always. I hope that the glory of World War II can be reproduced by researching the super soldier serum, otherwise I will not continue to support all the actions of General Ross after the Hulk incident. And the spearhead of all these actions is directed at S.H.I.E.L.D. In this world, S.H.I.E.L.D. came into being after the end of World War II. The S.H.I.E.L.D. is a disgrace to the military, as if it is declaring to the world that the US military is helpless against special things and characters. You must know that Captain America was the first special character known to the whole world, and Captain America is just now proper American soldier. If General Ross reports to the military that S.H.I.E.L.D. is leaving the closest test item of the Super Soldier Project, Coulson doubts that they will send planes and tanks to surround all S.H.I.E.L.D. offices in the United States tomorrow morning. Stepping, the sound of footsteps came, and Morena dragged her broken body and walked over to help Kane. After all, she was still a puppet body. She couldn't repair her body, so she could only support Kane and staggered towards the abomination, while Coulson looked at her back, and a trace of regret crawled into his heart. Hey, who is that kid? Who let him pass? Stop him. General Ross, who had been staring at the abomination, saw Kane and Morena for the first time. He saw the surrounding U.S. troops, and immediately jumped into command. Wake them up. Caw caw caw. The sound of a bolt being pulled resounded in the open space. Coulson led his men across the gap between the U.S. soldiers and the abomination, and raised their guns to aim at the U.S. troops. That's so and so. What position do you have in S.H.I.E.L.D.? How dare you stop the U.S. military from doing things? General Ross was furious. The loathsome body was extremely important to him. Now even if the President of the United States came, it would be difficult to stop him. Get it, not to mention the S.H.I.E.L.D. Sorry, General Ross, we have detected a large amount of gamma rays in that corpse. This kind of radiation source can affect human beings. Our duty authorizes us to block anyone who wants to get close to the radiation source, including the U.S. military. Compared to making excuses, Coulson is worthy of General Ross. Although he can't help Kane get back the body, he can at least prevent others from hindering his actions. He feels that he owes Kane too much. If he couldn't help him, he was afraid that his conscience would drive him crazy. Bring me back Bronski's body, and kill anyone who dares to stop it. General Ross was going crazy, seeing that the plan that he had worked so hard for half his life was so close to success, but someone got in on him again. He even pulled out his gun and put it on Coulson's head, as if he would kill him with one shot if he didn't get out of the way. General Ross could be regarded as stabbing a hornet's nest. The agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. immediately raised their guns, and the American soldiers were unambiguous. Years of training also allowed them to immediately raise their rifles and aim at each other. Hey, calm down, you don't need to do this. A spider thread flew over and took away General Ross's pistol. As for the pistol in Coulson's hand, Peter selectively ignored it. He limped and jumped off the roof next to him, playing with the pistol in his hand. Look, you are not enemies with each other, the real enemy has been dealt with, and my friend just wanted to see his own. It's just a trophy. The ownership of the prey should belong to the hunter who killed it, right? That belongs to the United States military, not a beast in the hunting zone. General Ross said righteously, but he always felt that he was not so confident because he lacked weapons in his hand. But when the life and property of the people of the United States are threatened, they have the right to kill the enemy, don't they? Maybe he just wants to make sure that the enemy is dead. Matt also came over with Erica's support. This standard lawyer's tone gave General Ross a headache again. No one wants to deal with lawyers, and neither does he. Whether he is dead or not, it is the property of the military. He is a guy who hides his head and shows his tail. He has no right to touch him. Either you kill me or let us take back the property of the military. General Ross's words aroused the sense of belonging among the soldiers around him. They took a step forward in unison, aiming their guns at the chests of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the superheroes. Roar. I don't know if the action of the soldiers raising their guns brought back some bad memories in Hulk's mind. In short, the big green guy roared and stood behind Matt and the others, and his green eyes swept across the crowd. Soldiers, make them shudder. Well, this big guy is theoretically the property of your military, so you should take him back first. Peter was happy, and simply leaned on Hulk's thigh and sneered at General Ross and the others, but it seemed that Hulk K didn't like his behavior, and a twitch of his thigh muscles shook him to the ground. With Hulk standing up, General Ross has to be cautious. On the one hand, the words he just said were out of anger, and on the other hand, they did not mean to encourage the soldiers. He is not the kind of scientific general. Well, he is old and cunning who has retired from the battlefield, and he knows how to mobilize the enthusiasm of the soldiers most effectively. However, the effect of Hulk's green tranquilizer is more effective than his incitement. Soldiers can rush to enemies similar to them for victory, but it doesn't mean that they are willing to die in the hands of monsters, and it is still a kind of death that has no chance of winning. No way, the soldiers present have all participated in the mission to hunt down the Hulk. They are very aware of the gap between them and the Hulk. It cannot be smoothed out with a few rifles, let alone Spider-Man, Daredevil and Aegis. The game is over, so the soldiers looked at each other, and the muzzles of the guns began to slowly hang down. They have fallen into a stalemate here, and the cheap one is naturally Kane. Although Morena is seriously injured, it is enough to support the two of them to come to Abomination. Is he dead? Morena supported Kane and sat down next to Abomination, looking at this body full of terrifying energy, and couldn't help asking. Not yet. Kane shook his head. Through the eyes of the spirit, he could see that although he was much weaker due to serious injuries, the soul of hatred still stayed in his body, and there was no sign of losing it. Morena, is there a way to prevent others from seeing my actions clearly? Kane raised his head and asked. The Abomination must die. He is a sensible guy. If he is allowed to be taken away by General Ross and healed, who knows? One day he will come back to make trouble for himself, which is an irresponsible attitude towards himself and the friends around him, so he must kill the Abomination, but in order not to immediately anger General Ross, he needs some cover. Is this thing okay? Kane looked down, and there were two dusty red balls lying in the palm of Morena's hands. It seemed that she picked them up from the ruins. He had the impression that they were smoke bombs used by hand ninjas. After thinking about them, the scene in the bar that night, he couldn't help but nodded. The effect of this thing on ordinary people is very good. Bang bang. With two soft bangs, a large cloud of red smoke immediately enveloped Abomination's body. Of course, Kane and the others were also covered by the smoke, and no one could see their bodies. What are they doing? Get out of the way. The mutation alarmed General Ross, who grabbed Coulson's shoulder and was about to rush in, but Hulk, who felt that Kane and the others were fine, would not just let him go in the past. Although he was willing to listen to General Ross once for Betty and not kill Abomination, it didn't mean he would allow this old guy to interfere with his comrades. Even if Hulk lost his mind, he could still distinguish friend from foe. Therefore, it was Hulk's roar that responded to General Ross. When he was roared to the ground, the American soldiers who were about to move were also stopped by the roar. The moment the mist rose, Kane immediately pulled out the bone dagger, clenched his hands tightly, and ruthlessly inserted it into the heart of the Abomination. He believed that this bone dagger, which was powerful enough to absorb the demon's soul, would not disappoint him. Sure enough, no matter how powerful the loathsome body is, the strength of its soul cannot be compared with the demons in hell. Although Hulk's blood strengthened his body and also strengthened his soul a little, but once the bone dagger entered his body, that trace of soul howled and was sucked in by the bone dagger. Not only the soul, but also the life force that hates that is stronger than any creature on earth is sucked into the bone dagger along with the soul. These life forces have been transformed by the bone dagger into pure spirit power and flowed into Kane in that dry body. His lost vitality was quickly replenished, his skin and hair returned to normal as quickly as possible, while the spirit power in the bone dagger continued to pour into his body continuously. 1 second, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, and it took 5 minutes to absorb the life force in the Abomination. Kane even felt a sense of fullness, but it was spiritual. The power of the spirit wandered in the mana circuit in his body, which gave him a deeper understanding of Rothma's way of balance. It was not simply using dead energy, soul or flesh and bones, but using life its own energy is like a magician using natural energy. However, just when he was about to think through all this, a feeling of fatigue hit him and he woke up from the meditation. How long have I been meditating? Kane pulled out the bone dagger, and the corpse of the Abomination was shriveled and only skin and bones were left. With a wave of his hand, a wave of spirit power entered Morena's body and began to repair it. That speed was not much slower than the speed he had just recovered. It's been about 5 minutes. It's already noisy outside. We have to go out quickly. Okay, let's go, this corpse will be left to them. Kane nodded and stood up. Just as he was about to walk out of the fog with Morena, the mutation happened again. Master. A source of energy came out from the mist again, and Master Daniel reminded him again, but Master Ji Yuyi still reached out to stop him. Don't panic, this breath is similar to the one just now. It should be a spell mastered by that young man. Let's take a look. Yes, a hot feeling came from Kane's chest. He was no stranger to this feeling, it was the same feeling that summoned Morena in the night of the carnage. Kane removed the bone armor and opened his chest. Sure enough, the coat of arms shone golden again. With Morena's previous experience, Kane no longer rejected the coat of arms and let it operate independently. Released the spell of resurrecting the puppet. However, Kane noticed that the spirit power mobilized by the resurrection of the puppet this time is much more than the previous resurrection of Morena. It seems that the coat of arms will summon a big guy this time. The golden spirit power shot out from the coat of arms again and merged into the corpse of the abomination. Soon, the transformation began, and the golden corpse began to shrink. The original 4-meter-high abomination shrunk in half, leaving only 2 meters. Left and right, but the figure is still thick. Looking at this figure, Kane can only secretly pray that he will not be a woman like Morena. If it is a woman of this size, Kane will have a headache how to arrange her work and life. This is too eye-catching. Is it possible to let her try in the WNBA? Just as Kane was thinking wildly, the transformation was gradually completed, the golden light dissipated, and a bald man stood up from the ground, his tall and protruding muscles shone with bronze light. The white teeth were immediately revealed, and this smile reminded Kane of the Hollywood movie star Dwayne Johnson in his world. "Hello, Nephilim, my name is Korik, may the spirit of nature be with you." The big man named Korik extended his hand and shook Kane's hand, but his handshake etiquette was different from this world, it is directly holding the opponent's forearm. "Are you a druid?" After hearing his greeting, Morena couldn't help asking curiously. She had seen all kinds of heroes and was well informed, so she was no stranger to this greeting. "No, I'm a barbarian, but I have the blood of druids, and I can cast some of their natural spells." Unlike his appearance, the rough-looking Korik is very talkative and willing to keep a smile on his face. "Okay, Korik, let's go back and talk. Now, can you do me a favor and deal with some guys outside? They have some conflicts with me." Kane, who originally wanted to return the corpse, obviously it can't be done now, so he can only ask the heroic spirit who just came to this world to help him make up a little lie. The news of this world is really fast. Unexpectedly, he taught Peter to be honest a few days ago, and it is his turn today. Come to lie. Base. 10 sharp claws protruded from Carrick's hands, and there was a hint of rage in his smile. Why, another demon tried to change the fate of Nephilim. What kind of demon made me come dig their chests and see the color of their hearts? Well, in this context, Korik does look like an irritable savage, but now is not a good time to explore his lineage. Kane quickly stepped forward and pressed Carrick's shoulder and said, "No, it's not that serious, it's just some human soldiers, they want the corpse you used for resurrection, obviously I can't give it to them now, so I need your help give them an explanation." "Oh, ordinary people's soldiers. Although they are weak, they can maintain a certain order. Well, I don't mind giving them an explanation." Fortunately, Carrick seemed reasonable, which also made Kane relieved. After a few more minutes of delay, General Ross couldn't take it any longer. He had a premonition that as time went by, the corpse of the abomination was getting farther and farther away from him. Exercising his right, he ordered the helicopter to be lifted into the air, and all the soldiers rushed into the fog at all costs to get back their abomination. "Stop, we're coming out." At this critical moment, Kane's voice came out of the fog, which made everyone feel relieved. They are not crazy, and the devil is willing to fight in the center of New York. Kane put on the bone armor again and led Morena and Korik out of the fog. Seeing their vigorous steps, Peter and Matt rushed over to hug him happily, even Hulk was beside him. He grinned, but he became a little wary of the big guy behind Kane, because there seemed to be something wrong with the guy's eyes staring at him. Seeing that Kane came out safely, Coulson no longer blocked General Ross, Shield stepped aside, and General Ross immediately led his people into the fog. Although he was a little surprised by Carrick's sudden appearance, but the imperative now is to keep the abomination in your hands. "No." General Ross, who got in while the fog was thinning, let out a furious shout, and then with red eyes, he rushed out of the fog and came to Kane, questioning him angrily. "Where did you get Bronsky? If you don't hand him over today, you won't be able to go anywhere." The enraged General Ross gave an order, and the soldiers once again formed an encirclement circle. "Sorry, that monster is dead." Scanning around, Kane shrugged and said helplessly. After hearing his words, Peter and Matt immediately put on a vigilant posture. Judging from the performance of General Ross, it seemed that this was not the answer he wanted. "Where's the corpse? Where did the corpse go?" From the performance of Shield, he was already mentally prepared when the abomination was shot down from the sky, but what he couldn't tolerate was that Kane lost all the corpses, which made him continue to study the plan. "Sorry, General, I may not have made it clear just now. I mean, the monster is dead, but Mr. Bronsky you said is not dead. What nonsense are you talking about? This time, everyone's eyes turned to Kane, and they all wanted to know which country Kane was talking about. Look, through the battle just now, you may have discovered that I am a mage. Mr. Bronsky's change of thinking after the mutation seems to us to be a kind of thinking confusion caused by the surge of spells. Kane's mind started at full speed running. He put together the magic terms he knew and began to tell stories. The purpose was to use these unknown things to prevaricate General Ross. As for whether he could succeed, he could only resign himself to his fate. So, this Mr. Click is actually Mr. Bronsky, but he forgot all the previous things when he recalled his consciousness. As you know, such powerful gamma radiation can cause great damage to the brain. Yes, as for the appearance issue, I only blame me for not being good at learning and not being able to restore Mr. Bronsky to his original appearance, so he can only become what he is now. Kane looked at General Ross sincerely, hoping that he could believe his words. He was talking nonsense, but looking at the old general's flushed face as if he was drunk, he was probably a little bit hesitant. Fart, are you coaxing children? If you are treating Bronsky, why did you release the mist? You must have used some method to hide him. This stupid big guy is not Blonsky at all. Obviously, General Ross' IQ is always online, and I don't believe a word of Kane's words. There was no other way. Kane looked at Carrick and had no choice but to use his trump card. General Ross, how can you believe that he is Mr. Bronsky? I'll believe it if you make him a giant again. Well, I really can't do anything about you, but let's say first, I'm not responsible for any accidents. Kane turned sideways and made way for Carrick to face General Ross. When talking nonsense with General Ross, Kane communicated with Carrick in his heart. This seemingly stupid big man is actually an outlier among barbarians. He is well known for his tricks, and relying on his clever mind, he also mastered the spells of the Druid transformation system, which made Kane a little more sure of dealing with General Ross. Mr. Click, this General Ross is your former boss. He doesn't quite believe that you will transform. Can you let him see your transformed form? Kane turned around and said sincerely. Speaking for General Ross, he smiled and winked at Carrick. He looked like a loyal but cunning savage. Carrick quietly gave a thumbs up to indicate that he understood what to do, then looked down at General Ross with a puzzled expression and said, "My boss? I don't have any boss, and I don't know him. This old guy, I grew up in the woods, Kane brought me out of there. He's a good guy, other guys are always trying to shoot me with a shotgun. Don't think that you can get away with pretending to be Tarzan of the Ape. You can't fool me with my eyes. You are that kid's accomplice. Don't think that you can pretend to be Hulk because you are tall. You are still far away. You are such a useless basketball player. They are all over the field, show me if you have the ability to transform yourself." General Ross seemed really crazy. He dared to say anything, but unfortunately, his madness was fine against other people, but against a barbarian. The attitude of the old general has successfully angered Carrick. Even the most ordinary barbarian doesn't like to be called a waste, let alone a barbarian hero like Carrick. As soon as General Ross finished speaking, he saw Carrick's eyeballs start to become bloodshot, and the thick hair on his body became longer and denser, and his height was constantly rising. The fronts of the pair of wide palms it also stretched out its long sharp claws. In less than a second, a giant bear with a height of more than 3 meters appeared in front of General Ross. It opened its bloody mouth and roared at the old general's face. The sound wave straightened the old general like a jet. Wrinkles on the face. By the way, I helped him make a hairstyle, similar to that of an airplane head. The guarded soldiers tremblingly raised their rifles and aimed at Carrick. No matter how loyal the soldiers were, they could not help complaining to General Ross. Your bad temper really needs to be changed. It is not right to scold anyone. These superheroes with supernatural powers, it's okay this time, the green giant didn't show up, but this giant brown bear doesn't look much more annoying than that one. Look at the claws, they are faster than them. The rifle in his hand is too long, a paw will definitely dismember him. General Ross was also confused. He was sure that this was definitely not a hallucination. He could see the trembling little tongue deep in the giant bear's throat just now from the big bear's mouth. As for the guy in front of him who turned into a giant bear, he can't be sure if it's Bronsky, but he can at least be sure that this guy is definitely not easy to mess with. Body size is often directly proportional to strength, just look at Hulk. Calm down, Korik, they are not enemies. At this moment of crisis, Kane jumped out, stood fearlessly in front of the giant bear, and opened his hands. His body looked so impressive in front of the giant bear. Thin, but tall in front of the soldiers, because he is risking his life to protect them, he really deserves to be a superhero. General Ross, I have used natural magic to make Carrick's changes a lot, so don't provoke him anymore. Okay, the mystery of magic is beyond your comprehension, and he has nothing to do with Hulk's power already. Kane turned his head and said righteously, and Morena felt that his acting skills were even better than their best bard. At this moment, Coulson also hung up the phone and came over, looked at General Ross seriously and said, General, I have just reported the truth to Director Furui about the incident here, and also reported to the International Security Council arbitration has been proposed, and I believe an order will be issued to you soon, and I hope you calm down and wait for the final resolution of the matter. HMPH, I'm a general of the United States, and the International Security Council has nothing to do with me. Before General Ross could finish speaking, an officer hurried over with a phone, whispered something in his ear, and said the phone was handed to him. As soon as he picked up the phone, the old general heard a familiar voice from the microphone saying loudly, Ross, you fool, what are you doing? How could you make Hulk appear in New York and make such a big fuss? Things are coming. General Ross recognized that it was the Secretary of Defense who was speaking, and he represented the military and the president. No matter how old General Ross was, he did not dare to be presumptuous with him, so he could only reply in a low voice, Sir, please listen to my explanation. It was an emergency, and it was caused by Colonel Bronsky's unauthorized injection of Hulk's blood. Now his body may have fallen into the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D. We must get it, regardless of the International Security Council, we not far from success. Ross, you idiot, I don't care what the International Security Council says, but you can't have the Hulk in there. What is that place? Manhattan, the International Financial Center, the real heart of America, almost every big business in America. You know how many complaint calls the White House has received in just a few hours. Let me tell you this, if you don't evacuate now, Mr. President will not be far from stepping down. At that time, you think can the super soldier project continue? So, I ask you to evacuate Manhattan immediately, now. Immediately. As for Bronsky's body, I will go to negotiate with S.H.I.E.L.D., and you evacuate it for me first. Yes, Your Excellency Minister. General Ross seemed to have aged a lot at once, and his hand holding the phone slowly dropped. He looked at Kane and the giant bear beside him, and said helplessly, close the team. However, when he turned around and walked towards the helicopter, he whispered to the adjutant, go to the laboratory where Bronsky's accident happened, and remove all relevant materials, not even a piece of paper, including that Ph.D. The U.S. soldiers put away their weapons with a sigh of relief, and evacuated in groups. The surrounding policemen couldn't help applauding Kane and the others. These superheroes saved their lives while saving the entire city. Ordinary policemen on the front line are still very grateful to them. Peter waved at the policeman. He was also very proud of being able to perfectly solve such a big crisis of hatred. Compared with him, Kane was a little unhappy. He passed this level with gags, but it was predictable. Well, his name will definitely be hated by the US military, and it is not so easy to get rid of the crime of hatred. As for using S.H.I.E.L.D. as his backer, he never even thought about it, not to mention how much S.H.I.E.L.D. has been eroded by Hydra. There is no Hydra in S.H.I.E.L.D., can they rely on them? Once an unresolved crisis arises, the International Security Council can bypass Nick Fury and directly order a nuclear bomb to attack New York City, and let such a person be his own. I don't know when my backing will be sold by them, so after all, I still have to rely on my own strength, and it's safer to be a detached person. But it's useless to think so far now. Kane settled down and walked towards Hulk. This big guy is the most important problem to be solved at present. A ray of spirit entered Hulk's body. It was Kane's soul-soothing spell. Judging from the effect of using it several times, it was very helpful for calming the mind. He hoped it would be successful this time. The appearance of Hulk depends on the power of anger. When his emotions stabilize, he will turn back to the smart and elegant scientist Bruce Banner. This is what Kane learned from the previous Life movies. It turns out that it is quite useful. With his magic spell, Hulk's body began to shrink slowly, and finally turned back to Bruce. Seeing this, Betty ran over and supported his sweetheart who was naked in the upper body. "Oh, thank you." Bruce Banner rubbed his head and thanked Kane. After so long, it was the first time that he returned to a normal person in a waking state. Although he had some headaches, it was also worse than before, much better. Embracing his beloved girlfriend and kissing deeply to celebrate the rest of his life, Bruce Banner's curiosity of scientists regained the upper hand. He asked Kane, "Is that magic just now? It's amazing. Is this still true? This is the first time someone can bring me back to normal. Can I learn this kind of magic?" "Oh, don't get me wrong, I just want to find a way to control myself." "I'm afraid not, Bruce. The magic I have learned has very strict blood requirements, and not everyone can learn it. However, I can give you a piece of advice. There are many mind-cultivating sects in the East. Maybe you can learn it there. Learn how to control your emotions." Kane told the truth and gave Bruce a piece of advice. He knew that Bruce was a kind person, and he didn't intend to hurt others. At the same time, he was actively seeking solutions. Kane felt that he should go to the East for a try. He has read from history books that Eastern sects have many ways to control emotions, which may be able to help him. "East? That's too far away." Betty raised an objection. In her cognition, the East is synonymous with poverty and backwardness. She even felt that Bruce would starve to death there. "Betty, I have to solve my own problems before I can really return to you. The East and South America are all the same to me. I have to stay away from the crowd, otherwise I may hurt others at any time." Bruce Love squeezed her hand. "This one. Kane Joe. This Mr. Joe is a very powerful magician. His words are very inspiring to me. From a scientific point of view, I have tried my best, but I still can't solve my problem. Perhaps, the power of occultism and religion is exactly what I want. Necessary, their idealist knowledge system may be able to solve, for example, control emotions so that I will not get angry. So, let me try it, for our future." "Okay, Bruce, you go. I hope you can remember that there is always someone waiting for you." Betty wiped her tears and let go, while Bruce smiled at her and Kane turned and got into the crowd in the movie. The sharp-eyed Kane noticed that Melinda beside Coulson followed quietly. It seems that S.H.I.E.L.D. is determined to win Hulk. He's a good enemy, but it's a pity that he can't control the power in his body. Carrick returned from the giant bear to a human form and came to Kane and said regretfully. From the very beginning, he had his eyes on Hulk. Among all the people present, except for Kane, he is worthy of a fight, but unfortunately, for the time being, this fight cannot be fought. "Hey, Kane, who is this big guy? He just turned into a bear. It was so cool. Don't you want to introduce us?" Peter limped over. He finally enjoyed the cheers of the crowd and thought of himself. "Friends, also, you two had better give me a reasonable explanation for the fact that you came out tonight without notifying me." "Okay, let's go home, drink and talk." Kane smiled and patted Peter on the shoulder, then pulled Matt and walked outside. The long night is finally coming to an end, and superheroes can also take a break. "Wait, Kane." A voice stopped them, and when they looked back, it was Coulson walking towards them. "I'm very sorry about what happened tonight," Coulson said with a face of shame. Kane knew that he was referring to the matter of snatching the corpses, but he was relieved. If you really treat others as friends, don't make things difficult for them. Moreover, Coulson also took the lead to stand up at the most critical moment, otherwise it is hard to say whether he can absorb the hatred smoothly. "Come on, Phil, don't take it to heart. In the end, when you stood up and helped me stop General Ross, you did enough. I can't ask for more. Are you free? Come and have a drink with us." Kane smiled. Said, "No, I'm afraid I'll have to write a report for a long time for such a big event tonight. You know, we have to give the higher-ups a reasonable explanation." Seeing that Kane really didn't mean to blame him, Coulson returned to his smile. "By the way, the identity of this big guy is still the same." "Yes." Kane nodded with a smile. This is the benefit of having a good relationship with S.H.I.E.L.D., at least in New York. With Coulson around, he can save a lot of trouble. "Right, don't forget staring at the hand. This time let that monster interfere and let their leader run away." I took a quick look. He must have a very close relationship with the devil. Coulson put away his smile and nodded. "Don't worry, they will be the focus of the New York branch's work in the next step. I will let you know when I have any news. Farewell to Coulson. Kane and the others continued to walk out. Suddenly, his heart moved, and he looked up to the roof opposite, but there was no one there. He shook his head, thinking it was himself the hallucination, smiled and continued to follow Peter and the others. After Kane disappeared at the intersection, the figures of the two mages reappeared on the roof. Master Yi, that kid seems to have discovered us. Master Daniel said, looking at the direction where Kane disappeared. He couldn't help being a little startled. This was the first time he was discovered by someone who was not in the mage system. Well, it's okay, Master Daniel, I will meet him in person to determine how dangerous he is. Under the hood, Master Yi's mouth curled up, and he became more interested in Kane. Yes, Master Ancient One. So, neither you nor Morena are actually from this world. Peter looked at Carrick in surprise. They didn't actually drink alcohol. After all, everyone was exhausted from the night's battle. After leaving the scene, they went back to rest. Fortunately, the superheroes' recovery ability is good, and they are full of energy after only one night's rest. Continue to start the next day's work. This sentence was asked by Peter when there was no one in the store. Yes, we are all souls who died fighting against the forces of hell. It is our honor to sacrifice to protect the world, but I am still very honored to be summoned by Priest Rothma to continue fighting. Carrick raised his glass kudos to Kane. Kane heard Corrick's thanks, and nodded with a smile. After communicating, he learned about Corrick's life experience. This heroic spirit who was reborn on the basis of abominable corpse turned out to be guarding the world stone on the top of the sacred Mount Ariat. One of the 3 barbarian heroic spirits. In the second battle of killing demons, Baal tried his best to avoid the protection of the 3 heroic spirits and entered the world stone hall with the help of the barbarian relic given to him by the barbarian traitor Elder Nilisek. The strength of the barbarian heroic spirits, even if they were as strong as the destroyer demon King Baal, they would not want to fight them on Mount Ariat. However, in the end, the bravery was defeated by the conspiracy. Although Bar failed, he also destroyed the Ariat Mountains, the holy land of the barbarians. Corrick was lucky, and was finally taken in by Valordane's Hall of Valor, and was finally able to be resurrected in this world by Kane's strange puppet resurrection technique. After all, no one in the entire Hall of Valor can have more than one a barbarian who has mastered druid spells. Do you only fight in your life? Please, look at this beautiful world. There are many things worthy of your attention, such as sports or movies. Look, your appearance is very suitable for these 2 industries. Peter expressed concern about Click's way of thinking about fighting madness. It seems that this is another dark hero like Frank or Kane. He feels that he should find a way to correct their thinking. Little boy, if your world was invaded by demons every few decades, you wouldn't pay attention to anything else. Rats the size of wild boars, and little ghosts with torches for the joy of setting your house on fire, they are your neighbors, and the plants that can eat people and the rotting corpses are your guests. Do you think there is anything else worthy of our attention besides fighting? Morena replied with a smile at the counter. In her opinion, Peter is like a child who hasn't grown up. He talks about justice, and always wants to influence others. However, although she doesn't agree with his ideas, she doesn't intend to correct him. There is nothing wrong with having such an innocent little brother by your side, because Peter represents the goodness in human nature, and he can bring hope to everyone. In contrast, dark heroes like Kane who are very similar to the moral it is forced out by the cruel reality, it is better to have less. Quote. Well, your world is too cruel, but this world is different, here is safe, maybe you can find some more interesting things. Peter is very depressed, so far no superhero agrees with his idea. It's really different. The guy who can grow big and green yesterday is very interesting. I look forward to meeting him again. Carrick took a sip of beer and agreed with Peter's words. Quote. As a result, Peter became even more depressed. Jingle. The bell at the door of the bar rang, and 2 people in weird clothes and hoods walked in. Morena held her bone bow behind the counter calmly, while Carrick casually hung his hand. 5 The sharp claws also stretched out quietly. No one can approach them without them noticing. If there is, it must not be a weak person. Hello, superheroes, my name is Ji Yi. I am from Karmatage, and I am a mage. This is Mage Daniel, my companion. The leader took off his hood, and a delicate-faced woman appeared in front of everyone. She had no hair and some wrinkles on her face, but her smile gave people a sense of peace. Mage Ancient One, the supreme magician on Earth, protects the Earth in this dimension from being eroded by the power of magic. It can be said that he is the representative of mages in this world. After Cain came to this world, he was worried about what the mages would do to him. Attitude: after all, the magic I use is not in this world at all. However, when the Ancient One mage really stood in front of him, Cain did not have the slightest thought of fear. Looking at her, for some reason, Cain suddenly thinking of teacher Rothma who taught him magic, the eyes of both of them were full of peace and wisdom. Hello, Mage Ancient One, my name is Cain, and I am also a sorcerer. I think you are here to find me. Cain took the initiative to take the words of Mage Ancient One. I also know something about myself and others, so there is no need to hide it anymore. Oh, my God, could it be that I live in a magical world? Why didn't I know there are so many mages in this world before I met you? Peter scratched his head. He felt that his appearance was already dramatic enough, however, he did not expect that as time went by, he knew more incredible things. That's because we have been guarding the spiritual world, just like you have been guarding the material world. Master Gu answered Peter's question with a smile, looking like a kind teacher who was willing to solve doubts. Spirit world. Yes, our Earth is not alone in the universe. In the endless universe, there are many creatures that can erode other planets spiritually. As a vibrant planet, the Earth will naturally appear in their vision. From a long time ago, the Supreme Mage has protected the Earth from their erosion, and I am honored to be the Supreme Mage of this term. The Ancient One was tirelessly helping Peter with popular science. Cain didn't bother her because he knew very well that the Ancient One was not so much trying to literate Peter as he was slapping him around. Cain's alternative puppet resurrection technique, always able to communicate with the dark world, this is probably the reason why the Ancient One came to the door. Cain was also prepared for this, but he has a clear conscience because he has never done anything that endangers the Earth. And from what he knew in his previous life, Mage Ancient One was not unreasonable, otherwise she wouldn't have drawn power from the dark dimension in order to protect the Earth. More importantly, Cain is not the trainee priest when he first came to this world. The battle with the abomination has made him a new improvement. Now he is infinitely close to the master of the necromancer, although he dare not say that there is a certain chance of winning against the Ancient One mage, but the different spell development directions of the two systems, coupled with Priest Rothma's proficiency in the soul, gave him the confidence to have an equal dialogue with the Ancient One mage. I admire what you and your predecessors have done, Peter said sincerely. He was not so credulous at first, but after staying with Cain for a long time, he also had some understanding of magic. In addition, Cain, who is a mage, did not question the identity of the other party, so it means that the words of this ancient mage are mostly true. Okay, Peter, I think Master Ancient One is here to find me. Cain walked out from the counter and made a false introduction to the stairs. Master, let's talk upstairs. Master Gu smiled and nodded, followed Cain to the second floor, while Master Daniel stayed downstairs. Ah, this one, Mr. Daniel, what would you like to drink? I don't know what drinks mages like, because my friend Cain usually drinks alcoholic beverages. Peter began to greet Master Daniel, who had not spoken all the time, and now he is full of respect for these masters who protect the Earth. How about a glass of Blue Friday? I recently heard that this cocktail is very popular in New York. I don't know if you have it here. Yes, it was invented by Cain. You really caught up. Peter happily rushed into the bar and began to prepare. However, the mages in my impression shouldn't be drinking gracefully. Black tea, or some water infused with mana-rich plants. Where did you draw this conclusion? Plants rich in mana. Our mana comes from the magic dimension, so we don't need to eat or drink anything. And do you think mages are ascetics who practice in their rooms? My youngest disciple just went to Taylor Swift's concert a few days ago. Master Daniel smiled and took the Blue Friday from Peter's hand, picked it up and tasted it. Well, it's really good. After taking a sip of the wine, Master Daniel couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Peter stared dumbfounded at the slightly bald uncle in front of him, took out his mobile phone from his pocket and skillfully took a photo of the cocktail in his hand, then looked up and asked him, "Do you provide free Wi-Fi? I want to send a message." Twitter. Compared to the couple downstairs, the dialogue between Cain and the Ancient One seems to be more in line with the identities of the mages. Cain, right, it doesn't matter if I call you that. It's okay, I'm just a beginner who has just stepped into the magic world, you are fully qualified to call me by my name directly. Thank you, I came from far away from Nepal, mainly because I detected a gate to another dimension opened above New York last night, and found that this gate seems to be opened by you. For the safety of the Earth, I want to talk to you. Of course, you have always been committed to protecting the Earth from other magical dimensions. I can understand this cautious attitude. Cain's heart moved, and it seemed that the magical fluctuations he felt on the roof last night were the Ancient One mages and the others those who stayed, but from the fact that they didn't make a move at the time, it can be seen that they still have goodwill towards themselves. Thank you. Can you briefly introduce the dimension you are connected to? I would like to know the cause of this passage. With all due respect, in order to protect the Earth, the lineage of the Supreme Mage has built 3 magic nodes here, and in it 3 spell temples have been built on Earth. Theoretically speaking, if it is not the permitted dimensional channel, it is impossible to be opened on the Earth, so I am very curious about the channel you opened. Cain thought about it, and decided to tell everything to Master Ancient One, not only because he knew that Master Ancient One was a respectable guardian of the Earth, but also because of his feeling for him, rest and balance. Dao's Rothma priest has a very high understanding and resistance to the soul and spiritual level, so his feeling is not because of the charm spell that Master Ancient One released on him, but the kind of trust that comes from the heart. This also made Cain feel good about her. Ah, Master Ancient One, in fact I am not a native of Earth, I am from another dimension. Cain told Master Ancient One his experience from beginning to end. Out of trust, second, he also hopes to get some advice from Mage Ji Yi. After all, she is also a master of space magic, which may help Rothma and his own encounters. After listening to Cain's experience and asking a few questions, Mage Ancient One also fell into deep thought. It's not that she doubted the authenticity of Cain's words. She is also a spiritual master herself, and she also knows that Cain is not lying. The reason is that the ancient master of the dark dimension that Cain mentioned has never heard of it, but from Cain's description, it is a dangerous dimension. The fate of mankind has always been threatened by 2 different dimensions, but because of this, countless resistance, the heroes of the foreign enemies emerged one after another, composing a song of epic history. As for the dimension in which Cain was born, it is extremely safe, and it seems that it has never been invaded by foreign enemies, whether it is spiritual or material, but many real levels are projected there in different ways, which is also very interesting. As for the dimension where Rothma is located, there is too little information to judge. Sorry, Cain, I haven't been to the 3 dimensions you mentioned, so I can't explain what's going on, but I will check it out when I go back to Karmataj. In the long river of history there may be predecessors who have reached one of the dimensions, and maybe there will be a few words left behind. After finishing speaking, Ancient One looked at Cain with a smile again and said, however, now you can settle down in this dimension first, and practice the way of Rothma that you have mastered. Maybe one day you can return to the world with your own strength. Going to those dimensions can even save ordinary people in those dimensions. After all, you are the only being who has reached these dimensions, maybe you are the one chosen by fate. Through what Cain told about the experience, the ancient master probably understood the boy in front of him. He is upright, brave, and full of sacrifice. He is a very good boy and has a sense of responsibility. The ancient master even wanted to take him into his sect and inherit the title of Supreme Master. However, since Cain has already practiced other spells and has achieved a little success, Ancient One Mage will not force it, and it is not bad to have a good relationship with each other. Who knows how high this child's final achievement will be? Many friends have multiple paths. This principle is very clear to the Supreme Mage. Otherwise, how could Asgard be able to enter and exit the Earth casually? Is it true that the Supreme Mage is blind? It is not, because the 2 parties have an agreement with each other. After the friendly conversation ended, Mage Ancient One got up to leave, and Cain followed her and sent out. Seeing that Cain was fine, Morena and Korik put away their weapons, and the magic weapon in Mage Daniel's sleeve was also lost. Shine. Before going out, Master Ji Yi turned his head and smiled and said to Cain, by the way, Cain, if you encounter any enemies from different dimensions in the future, you might as well go to the New York Temple to find Master Daniel, and we will do our best. Cain was taken aback for a moment. It seems that the demon hidden in the hand has also attracted the attention of Master Ji Yi. otherwise she would not have left such a sentence suddenly, but Kane may not be looking for Master Daniel, because these demons, but it's all his nutrition. Master Gu, is he all right? After returning to the New York temple, Master Daniel asked the question he had been holding back in his heart. Well, from the current point of view, he is still a good boy, but his actions are a bit ruthless, and he may not be free from the possibility of being corrupted by dark forces, so I will trouble you to observe more. The ancient master has nothing else to Kane's opinion, but I am more worried about the Demon King, he said. How many heroes with strong will and courage to sacrifice are finally reduced to their puppets? If such demons invade this world, I am afraid that it will not be much better than the arrival of Dormammu. Where's the big man he summoned? Asked the ancient mage. Leaving Master Daniel down just now also meant to let him check the creature from another dimension, and the fog couldn't cover their eyes. Crude, bloodthirsty, and highly vigilant, but not cruel, more like a warrior who has been invading in battle all year round, and that lady also gave me the same feeling, at least the bow in her hand came from the moment we entered the door. Just hold it in your hand. Master Daniel expressed his feelings, and it is not an ordinary person who can become the chief mage of the temple. Where's that little girl? I didn't find any trace of her on that child. Finally, the Ancient One mage finally asked another key question. They watched the battle upstairs last night, except for Kane, who was able to open the dimension channel. Besides, I was most impressed by the little girl. The spells she casts are completely different from Master Ancient One and the others. They are all based on destructive power. If the spells of Master Ancient One and others are for protection, then her spells are in order to destroy, the disintegration ray that directly decomposes the source of matter. Even the Ancient Master feels terrible. Not even below. Could it be because the little girl's strength is too terrifying to exist in this dimension for a long time? Master Daniel put forward his own opinion. There is a possibility that these powerful fighters were all summoned by Kane, and maybe that little girl is also. Since they are all related to Kane, then he is the key. Master Daniel, I may trouble you in the future. Don't say that. Everything is for the stability of this world. Seeing Master Gu saluting himself, Master Daniel also hurriedly returned the salute, and regarded Kane's matter as the first priority. At the same moment, Kane's bar welcomed a new guest. Hey, Kane, your Razma group is strong and strong. So many excellent employees are here. Are they holding a board meeting? A frivolous voice came from the door, and a man wearing big sunglasses walked into the bar. A well-fitting suit with a haircut and beard done by a stylist, making such a coquettish appearance, you don't need to ask to know who is coming. Kane glanced at him, put down the wine glass in his hand and sighed. What's the matter, Mr. Rich? Why are you free to visit our tavern today? Hey, what is your attitude? How can you treat a potential customer like this, and it may be a big customer? Come on, what else can you remember besides women? Tell me, what do you need to ask me? Kane knows what kind of virtue this guy is from the movies of his previous life. Absolutely can't think of other men. May I take this as jealousy? You must be jealous of my charisma. Well, no kidding. I just came back from Afghanistan and I was asked to bring you a message. Afghanistan? Kane pushed a glass of mixed cocktail over. It seems to be Frank's news, and Mr. Tony Stark in front of him seems to have become Iron Man. Thank you. Can you get me another hamburger? I just came back to New York and came straight here. I haven't eaten anything yet. Tony smiled and blinked at Morena. It seems that he will never change. There is no problem with being romantic. A barbecue hamburger was placed in front of him. Tony looked at the meat and remembered the scene after Frank shot it. His face was a little pale and he just picked up the bread and gnawed it. Okay, enough to eat and drink. Can you tell me the message Frank asked you to bring? Kane asked after Tony finished eating the bread and drinking the cocktail. Okay, this message is very simple. Frank asked me to tell you that he will be back later, so please take care. Tony said casually while wiping his mouth. Bang, a white flame rose in Kane's hand. He looked at Tony with a smile and said, Tony, I allow you to organize the language and repeat it again. Okay. Tony looked at the magical flame that was obviously stronger than what he had seen on the plane, and backed away again and again. I'm joking. In fact, Frank did say that he would come back later, but that's not the point. Tony's face became serious. The point is, Frank said you can help me. Help you? Be more specific. Kane frowned. What was it? Even Tony Stark, who had become Iron Man, wanted to seek his help. Tony sat down across from Kane again, and told the story of his encounter with Frank in Afghanistan from the beginning. Quote. We arrived at the training camp. It went smoothly at first. The terrorists there were no match for us until we reached the central area of the camp. Tony seemed to recall something. His eyes straightened, and he stuck out his tongue to lick. He licked his lips. Is there any wine? Have another glass. Hey. This time Kane didn't make a cocktail. Tony's expression was obviously frightened by something horrible. What he needed now was a glass of spirits to calm the shock, so Kane directly poured him a glass of whiskey. With one sip, Tony collected himself and looked up at Kane. Have you seen the living dead? What do you mean? We arrived at the center and found a barracks. We rushed in and found that there were 2 terrorists conducting human research inside. We launched an attack immediately, but the 2 seemed to have supernatural powers and did not. After being beaten to death, a secret room was opened and a few monsters were released, living dead who are not afraid of death and feel no pain, and they will rush towards you like a madman. Tony's emotions became more and more agitated, and his voice became more and more intense. Big. This made Peter stand up involuntarily. The hand. No, it's much scarier than those ninjas. Tony had obviously heard about the killer organization, but he resolutely denied Peter's judgment. Those living dead release heat energy that ordinary people can't bear. Even when the temperature rises, when it reaches a certain level, it will explode. Extremis virus. Kane's expression became serious. The first thing he thought of for such an obvious thing was the extremis virus that appeared in Iron Man 3, but how could that thing appear in the camp of the 10 Rings in Afghanistan? It's not AIM. Dr. Killian and Maya Hansen developed it in the lab. What the hell is going on? Frank and I worked hard and finally killed the group of living dead, but the 2 terrorists also escaped, but we found something else there. A dozen photos were placed on the bar by Tony. All of them are recent photos of Tony. I'm curious how you killed those living dead. Kane flipped through the photos and asked. He was more interested in those living dead. Frank shot them in the head, and they couldn't explode that way. Headshot. Kane doesn't remember that Extremis has this weakness. It's like a zombie in Resident Evil. He hasn't seen it with his own eyes, and he doesn't know what's going on. He puts aside the things he can't figure out. Looking at the photos, he asked, what's wrong with these photos? Of course they have to figure out the target's appearance before kidnapping you. Kane, these photos are not cut from newspapers and magazines, but photos of life, and I can swear that the angles of these photos are definitely not made by reporters. Kane heard the seriousness, and looked at it seriously. Sure enough, a few photos were taken in Tony's own company. This is not an angle that any reporter can find. Stark Industries is an arms company. The security forces in China are comparable to the CIA, so why these photos appeared in Afghanistan is worth scrutinizing. Kane's first reaction was that bald old man Opadri. It seems that the old guy in this world is also very ambitious. Of course, he can't tell Tony directly. After all, he watched Tony grow up, and it's just that he saved his life, and it was still entrusted by S.H.I.E.L.D., so one can imagine which is more important. You suspect that the kidnapping was caused by an insider. You should go to the CIA or the FBI. Even the S.H.I.E.L.D. is more useful than me. Why did Frank ask you to come to me? I'm not a policeman. How can you find the ghost for you? Kane pushed the photo to Tony. The inside ghost is for sure. At first I suspected that the military had leaked my whereabouts, but from these photos, it must be someone inside my company. Tony angrily punched the bar counter. However, this is not me. The reason for looking for you is that no matter how deep the inner ghost hides, I can find it out, and now that I have the ability to protect myself, ordinary people can't do anything about me. The key is that Frank is worried that the 10 Rings will come to New York to trouble me. You can break into a 10 Rings camp with Frank in Afghanistan, why worry about them? Caw caw caw. There was a sound of metal crashing. Tony took the suitcase from the bodyguard Happy, and put on the steel suit in front of Kane and the others. Peter stared at all this in a daze. This invention is much more powerful than his spinneret up. Click. The golden mask was opened, and Tony pointed to the finger marks on the steel armguard and said, look, these are the scars left on my body by those living dead. They have the ability to hurt me, and, as Frank said, the 2 who escaped terrorists are even more suspicious. They use a strange energy to deflect bullets. Frank suspects that it is the energy of magic. Among the people he knows, you are the only one who has studied magic. Of course, all I know you're the only one. So, Frank is worried that the Ten Rings will use magic to come to New York to trouble you. Kane frowned. This is different from the situation in the movie. Unpredictable variables will make things very troublesome. Yes, this steel battle suit brings together almost the top military technology in the world at present. It can be said that no one can kill me wearing a battle suit with conventional methods. However, magic is not necessarily the case. At present, I am afraid this kind of power is ignorant, and there is no way to defend against it, so I need your help. Tony finally let go of his frivolous appearance as a superficial disguise, looked at Kane seriously and said. Kane didn't know why Frank introduced Tony to him. He didn't have any special feelings for Tony. Tony was very rich, but so what, even if he could give Kane a lot of money, he couldn't let one step up in his strength, and the moment the real crisis hits in the Marvel Universe, money is worthless. As for the steel suit, Kane can only hee-hee. Does anyone else in S.H.I.E.L.D. have a steel suit besides the Iron Patriot? The spells help. Moreover, Kane doesn't like Tony's own behavior. He is always so superior, he is happy to save the world. He established a sense of responsibility and a worldview. In the final analysis, he and Kane, who were born in a wealthy family, are not the same. As for the S.H.I.E.L.D., Kane is not interested in getting involved with them at present. Can't get anything either. However, as a friend entrusted him, he couldn't refuse. Frank was the first friend he met in this world, and he had always taken good care of him. He could feel it. So, if it was really Frank, then he can only agree first, and ask Frank the reason after he comes back. Another point, compared to Tony, that guy Obadiah is not a good thing. That kind of inhuman capitalist would even sell his soul for money, and death 100 times is not too much. Well, since it's Frank's introduction, I'll be by your side in the near future to deal with those magic killers, but I hope you can take the initiative to find out the ghost first. That's the most important thing. Yes, the Ten Rings want to arrest you only for money or ammunition. If the insiders of your company are found out, I don't think they will be able to get close to you so easily. This is the solution to the problem. Kane rushed. Tony nodded, and said what he had been waiting for. This was related to his own life, so Tony couldn't help being nervous. Of course, I will start investigating this matter immediately. This is simply terrible. I really want to know why that guy gave up his chance to work in the world's top company and wants to talk to terrorists in Central Asia. Contact. Oh, by the way, during this period, if you have any requirements, just ask. I will do my best to satisfy you. I sincerely thank you for your help. How about a magic studio? I don't understand the needs of mages very well, or, do you like to change the bar? Kane rolled his eyes when he heard Tony's words, and sure enough, the way rich people reward others is so simple and rude, but this can't be done. Blame him. Nowhere would he be told what a Rothma priest needs. Kane handed over the bar to Peter and Morena, and followed Tony into his limousine alone. Anyway, Stark Tower is in Manhattan, and he and Morena also have telepathy, so there is no need to go out to protect Tony. Well, the bar has to stay open after all, or Peter will lose his job again. Where are we going now? Kane asked, sitting in Tony's stretch limousine. Go home first. I'm going to fix the Mark III in case of emergencies. Oh yes, Mark is the name I gave to the iron suit. What do you think? There is another point that Tony is embarrassed to say. When he, after knowing that there was an insider in the company, he never went back to the company. To be honest, he was not familiar with many people in the company, so he would subconsciously suspect anyone, and he knew it was wrong, so he simply didn't go back. The car drove into Tony's mansion in Long Island, which is a well-known rich area in New York, with good law and order and beautiful scenery. Regarding Tony's landmark mansion here, Kane commented, a very good target. It was hit by a missile. None of the attacks will affect the neighbors. Yes. Hey Kane, can't you say something lucky? Tony rolled his eyes. I'm praising you from the bottom of my heart. Well, those who dare to attack you are not ordinary criminals. It's normal for them to use missile-level weapons. Look, you will definitely not let them accidentally injure others when you live here. I think this is your right. A great contribution to society. Kane remembers that Tony's mansion has been attacked a lot, including his own death in the house. Well, it is estimated that he alone can support a decoration company. Tony, Just when Tony was about to argue, a beautiful figure walked out of the mansion. "Oh, let me introduce you. This is Pep, my life assistant. This is Kane Joe, my friend, come to stay at home for 2 days." Tony winked at Kane. He didn't want Pepper knowing that he was in danger. Kane nodded in satisfaction. "Hello, Miss Pep, we met once." Tony came back from Afghanistan for the first time, at the airport. "Oh, I remembered. I'm sorry, I patronized Tony at the time." Pep finally remembered where he had seen this familiar Asian face, and quickly apologized to Kane. "It's nothing, I can understand." Kane smiled, also winked at Pep, and then left Tony. Seeing this, Pep blushed immediately, and stopped asking further questions. "By the way, Pep, do you have anything to do with me?" Tony asked. "Oh, it's nothing special. I found a beautiful box, and I wanted to put the thing I removed from you last time, but I couldn't find it just now." In front of Kane, Pep was embarrassed to say, "I missed Tony, so I just found an excuse to meet him. It's probably thrown in a corner of my studio. It's okay, I'll find it someday when Jarvis cleans it up," Tony said casually. In fact, he wanted to talk to Kane about how to get rid of it. It was an inside ghost, but since little Pepper has already come, he must not be able to drive her away, so he greeted Kane. "Come on, try Pep's craftsmanship, let me tell you, the fried steak was amazing." As soon as meat was mentioned, Tony thought of Afghanistan and Frank again, and immediately changed his words. "Well, but the food I eat is a bit greasy recently, or else I should be vegetarian tonight." At dinner time, Tony, who was gnawing on the salad depressed, finally had enough time to think about the problem. He looked at the little Pepper sitting across from him, and suddenly had an idea. "Pep, do me a favor." "How can I help?" Pepper looked at Tony blankly. "Go to my office, enter the computer mainframe, call out the recent shipping list, and then copy it out for me." Tony took out a secret key from his pocket and put it on the table. "This is the login password. With it you can call up all the documents, especially the list before and after my accident. Be sure to help me find it." "What's the matter? Why did you ask me to do this?" Although Pep has a deep affection for Tony, it doesn't mean that she has no brains. Tony asked her to do this, obviously suspecting that something went wrong. Tony thought about it, and felt that Pep was still a trustworthy person, so he told her the truth. "A few days ago I went to Afghanistan to take revenge on those terrorists. Do you know what I saw? Stark Industries is the most advanced. The weapons and equipment of the company actually appeared in the terrorist camps. Some of the equipment has just entered the service of the U.S. Army, and it has not even been equipped to the front line, but the terrorists have it. What does this mean? Someone must be secretly selling the company's arms, and the position he holds is not low. What's more, I suspect that that person is related to my kidnapping, so I must find him out." "Oh, my God." Pepper covered her mouth. The news was too shocking. She thought that Tony's dangerous situation was just an accident, but she didn't expect that there were so many conspiracies behind it. "Tony, you can't let Pep go back by himself." Kane reminded that they haven't suspected Obadiah yet, which is very easy to expose themselves. "What's the matter? The inner ghost probably won't notice her. That was when you didn't come back. Now that you have come back alive, how do you know that he won't take risks out of fear of being exposed?" Kane looked at Tony seriously and said, the same sentence. "Reality is not a movie. As a company CEO, how could Obadiah not have his own strength?" And compared to Tony, who is always in the dark, if 80.00% of the employees in the entire Stark Industries listen to Obadiah, he is not at all not surprising, especially those company security personnel. They are all retired from the U.S. Special Forces. As long as Obadiah has enough money, it is not too easy to kill the little Pepper for him quietly. Just put it in a bag and throw it away just in the Decent River. Isn't that how Kane came here? Tony's mind is not slow at all. After hearing what Kane said, he immediately realized that what Kane said is very likely to happen, and the object of his current suspicion is Obadiah, because only Obadiah, the other major shareholder of the company, benefited the most from his death, so he naturally became the biggest suspect. "So, didn't they save me with you last time?" Spy. Kane's first reaction was the poisonous spider from S.H.I.E.L.D., but she didn't show up after the fierce battle last night, which means she's not in New York at the moment, maybe she was sent somewhere by Nick Fury. However, even if the Black Widow is here, it may take some time to quietly sneak into Stark Industries and steal the confidential documents. After such a long time, God knows that Obadi Research has not developed his Iron King. No, Tony, we don't have that much time now. We still have to ask Miss Pep to get the information, but I will help her find a suitable bodyguard. Tony looked at Kane, and found that his expression did not seem to be joking. So they nodded, and the two looked at Pep at the same time. The question now is whether Pepper dares to go. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.